meeting order. Would have the invocation from Commissioner Thorne.
Everybody bow your heads, please. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for giving us the opportunity to come out tonight in this beautiful weather, and that you give us the wisdom and put your hand on our shoulder to listen clearly, objectively, and make honest decisions and best for the city of Hernando. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes. Roll call.
Commissioner Ashworth,
Aye. Here.
Commissioner Thorne,
Here.
Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Max,
Here.
Commissioner Jordan,
Here.
Commissioner Hawkins,
Here.
Commissioner Skeen, Commissioner Safley.
Here.
Now, has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes?
I did have an issue that I addressed with Kristen, I think.
She said she's already corrected and got on the website and all that.
Okay.
So is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Thorne,
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan,
Aye.
Commissioner Safley,
Aye.
Commissioner Max,
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth.
Aye.
All right, the first item is PL 1785, Crestview Rezoning. Request for rezoning of 49 acres from agricultural to R15. The subject property is located on the west side of Keenlan Lane, south of Milam Lane, in Section 8, Township 3, Range 7. Cory Brady, representing the owner. Mr. Cados, will you present the staff report and comments?
Yes, sir. This is PL 1785. As you mentioned, it's a request to rezone 49 acres from A to R15, located on the west side of Keenlan Drive, south of Milam in Section 8, Township 3, and Range 7. Cory Brady's here tonight representing the developer of the property. A little background on this case. It was originally presented in October of 2023 as an R20 rezoning. That was subsequently withdrawn and then resubmitted in February of 24 as an R15 proposal with a preliminary plat condition to go along with the rezoning. This was recommended for denial and moved to the board, and subsequently the applicant met with some of the neighbors and presented a revised preliminary plat which reduced the number of lots from 80 to 55. Both of those plats are in your staff report. And so it made it to the board, and they remanded it back to you for another recommendation because of the substantial change and at the request of the applicant to the plat that was presented as that condition of rezoning. And so what you see tonight is the same request to R15 with a revised conditioned plat to go along with it. In addition, you'll see the covenants that's been presented and are unchanged from the original application, and the applicant can speak more to the details of that here in a second. As I mentioned, the applicant's proposing R15, and there's a description of which in your staff report of this low-density residential development and the district characteristics of that zoning district. The future land use map and the general development plan recommends this area and the surrounding area to single-family low-density dependent. The uses complemented recommended zoning categories of R12, R15, and R20. I did include site maps to show surrounding parcel sizes, and I know the applicant will speak to that tonight, to give some context of where the connections are happening and the timing of development. The three questions for rezoning, I know with the applicant presenting a preliminary plat that is conditioned, a lot of our focus is on the lots and the road network, but with this being a rezoning application, I would caution us to please consider the three criteria for rezoning as our approval or denial criteria. How this proposed amendment conforms to general development plan, why this existing zoning district classification of the property is inappropriate or improper, and the major economic, physical, or social changes have occurred in the vicinity of the property that were not anticipated by the general development plan and have substantially altered the basic character of the area. The applicant did provide answers to each of those questions, and I did provide proposed motions to approve, deny, or table in your staff report that you're welcome to amend if you see fit. And as I mentioned, this has been in front of you several times, and the reason it's in front of you again is because of that revised plat was substantially changed, and the applicant is offering that as a condition of approval, and so it kind of run with the zoning and it would be ultimately confirmed. The next check would be if the submittal of a preliminary plat comes in. That's kind of would be our check and balance of making sure that preliminary plat matches the next time it comes through. The applicant's available tonight. The staff report is pretty large just because I did include the previous submittals to provide context of where we started with this to how we got here tonight. The application's kind of evolved after public input and working with us. And so the applicant's here, and there's several presentations to follow, but I'm available if you have any questions.
Do any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Cardoza? Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and address in its entirety?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Billy Myers. I'm with Myers Law Group, PLLC. My office address is 265 North Lamar in Oxford, Mississippi. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, which is for subdivision that's to be known as Crestview Point. The applicant and the owner of the property is John Developers LLC, who the principals are John Reeves and Chris Lamb. They're here with us tonight. The planner for the project is Cory Brady with Integrated Land Solutions PLLC, who's also here tonight, will offer you evidence in support of this application. The engineer for the project is IPD LLC. Ben Smith is here also if there are engineering questions tonight. As Austin said, we're here to rezone. This is a straight rezoning from agricultural, which is the zoning district that the property exists under today, to an R15 residential use. It's a residential use that is recommended by the general development plan, as Austin said. It says R12, R15, R20. But keep in mind, as you consider this rezoning application, that it complies strictly with the general development plan that was produced for the city of Hernando. The alderman adopted the ordinance that was in accordance with study done by experts that were hired by the city to study property in 2007. And they have recommended the future uses of this particular property, and this application complies strictly with those recommended future uses, not asking for any variance from what's recommended in your general development plan. Now, as Austin said, there are 3 criteria that we have to meet, and he stated them. I won't repeat them, but Cory Brady will come forth and present to you our responses to each of those 3 criteria. But the state law is, as I've stated to you before, is in order to rezone property, and that is changing the law, changing the legal use of property, requires a clear and convincing evidence of a material change in the character of the neighborhood and a public need. Now, the evidence here is going to be overwhelming that the character of this property, when it was owned agricultural, has seriously changed. I mean, the people that live around it, those subdivisions have been developed. The character's clearly not agricultural as we stand here today, as was predicted by the experts who prepared the general development plan for the city of Hernando. And if you look at the evidence in this case, it clearly has developed exactly as the experts projected that it would. In addition, as Austin said, there's a plan for development of the property once it's rezoned to R15. And R15 is needed in order to implement the plan that is presented to you tonight. Cory's going to give you the details of that plan, but keep in mind that it reflects the concerns of the neighborhood. As best this developer is able to meet those concerns, he's done so. And I ask now Cory Brady will come forward and present you evidence of both changing the character and support of this application, as well as the detail that's been changed on the plan itself.
Chairman, Commissioners, nice to see you all again. Cory Brady, 9967 Bentwood Creek Cove, Collierville, Tennessee, representing John and Chris with this application. So, as Billy alluded and Austin mentioned, there are criteria that the state requires to meet for rezoning petitions. We've discussed this with some previous applications, but I'd like to go back through them briefly today just as a refresher, if you will. The first question is how the proposed amendment would conform to the general plan, and it's important that we note that this is the first question. This is the priority of the application. The second question is why the existing zone district classification of the property in question is inappropriate or improper. Why is the existing zoning district inappropriate or improper? And number three, what major economic, physical, or social changes, if any, have occurred in the vicinity of the property in question that were not anticipated by the general development plan and has substantially altered the basic character of the area, which make the proposed amendment to the zoning district map appropriate. With regard to question number one, how the proposed amendment would confirm, the city's Hernando's adopted general development plan, they adopted back in 2007, and it classifies this property as a residential district category, single-family, low-density residential. And that equates to single-family housing with urban services, so we have to have public water, public sewer to meet this criteria. 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre are recommended, so 2 to 3 houses per acre. The associated location policy stipulates that the category should be located on collector and major arterial streets. The associated zoning policy stipulates appropriate zoning classifications for the category are R12, R15, and R20, of which we are requesting R15 today. The infrastructure policy stipulates that sanitary sewer and public water services are required. As I mentioned previously, those are required. These statements are taken straight out of the land use classification information that's included in the general development plan, and I can pass that out if you guys need me to show it to you, but I think I have a copy in the slide here later. The existing zoning district classification of the property is in question is inappropriate or improper. Well, the subject property, as Billy mentioned, is inappropriately zoned, currently inappropriately zoned agriculture. As Billy mentioned, that the area is not agricultural in nature. It is predominantly suburban and neighborhood community. According to Article 5 of the City of Hernando zoning ordinance, the A agriculture district is intended to provide area for agriculture and rural uses with the city area. Number 2, agriculture district is to encourage vigorous agricultural industry within the city's zoning jurisdiction. And number 3, to ensure that urban-suburban development occurs contiguous to existing urbanized and urbanizing areas. And number 4, to prevent premature urban development in an area which is not adequately served by public facilities. So our summary is the current A agriculture zoning district is improper in that it does not permit the residential character, the lot sizes, or the residential densities that are recommended by the city's general development plan currently. Number 2, it prohibits urban-suburban development in an existing urbanized area. Number 3, it prevents urban development in an area that is adequately served by public sewer or water infrastructure. Number 4, the subject property is surrounded on all sides by urbanized residential districts developed having access to public infrastructure. Lastly, what major economic or physical changes have occurred in the area? Changes in the immediate vicinity. Obviously, the subject property was annexed by the City of Hernando in 1990. Public water was installed along Mackingville concurrent with the north adjacent Milam Country development in 1987. Public sanitary sewer was extended to serve the southwest adjacent Loma Vista PUD in 1993. In 2006, the DeSoto County Regional Utility Authority constructed the Short Fork Interceptor, providing public sewer to the subject property. In 2007, the City of Hernando adopted the General Development Plan, setting forth the general plan for development within its boundaries. Between 2000 and 2023, the city experienced a 151% increase in population. In recent years, the majority of properties within a half mile of the subject property have been rezoned from agricultural district to various single-family, multifamily, and commercial zoning districts in support of the continued population growth, employment opportunities, and urbanization of the area. The south adjacent Loma Vista PUD was approved in 1993 to allow those multifamily, high-density duplex residential uses. And the east adjacent Forest Meadows was approved in 2005 to allow R30 overlay single-family residential development, which is the same as R20 zoning in the City of Hernando. So this is your city of Hernando's current general development plan. The property, I know it's hard to see on there, but as I mentioned earlier, it's designated as a single-family low-density development. There are several statements. There's about 15 statements in the general development plan in the introduction section along that discuss or really tell us how to use the plan. And I say us because us as private citizens, us as developers, us as engineers, planners, you all as citizens and commissioners. I won't read all 15 of those statements, but I'm happy to pass it along. But, you know, some of the items say the Mississippi Code defines a comprehensive plan as a statement of public policy for the physical development of the entire municipality or county, adopted by resolution by the governing body. Billy mentioned that. This general development plan, the city of Hernando in 2006, somewhere around that time, and not exactly sure, but hired professionals to prepare this general development plan. They studied the area, they ran projections on demographics and came up with these land use classifications, transportation classifications, various other items to help guide the city in not only zoning actions, but also policy pertaining, to financial matters, what have you. It's essentially a guideline for growth of the town. And according to state law, zoning and other land use regulations must be based upon a comprehensive plan. This means that zoning and subdivision regulations at a minimum must conform to the local comprehensive plan. And that is, these are quotes that are from the actual document. The governing body uses the comprehensive plan to take action on two types of physical development matters. Measures that are specifically designed to implement the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations, capital improvements, et cetera, and two, other measures that routinely require legislative or governing authority approval, in this case, rezoning cases, public works projects, et cetera. So this is the subject property. I don't know if this laser works. I know it's hard to see. So right in the middle of the screen, below the red dot, and about this here is a tan area. And just I want to make sure to point it out. So this is the subject property that we're working on today. Milam Country Subdivision, Forest Oaks. We call this Valley Oaks, Loma Vista, on and on and on. So this is property line. This green is a delineation for rural, and then this is the single-family low-density residential that is proposed today. We're petitioning for today. This is the chart out of the development code that defines what single-family low-density residential is. And again, it's single-family units, 2 to 3 units to the acre, public services, et cetera. There's clear policies that are stated in here. I've named some of those already. I suspect you guys are quite versed in what some of these policies are. But the purpose of it is the continued care of dependent single-family residential land uses. Location policy, single-family, low-density, as we stated. The 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre is the density recommended. Buffer policy, densities of new adjoining residential developments should be compatible with existing residential areas, and a buffer may be provided when there is significant difference in densities. The city zoning ordinance prescribes those buffers as well. The appropriate zoning classification, again, for this category is R12, R15, and R20. Again, we're proposing R15. This is the existing zoning map. Right in the center is the A agriculture that it, by and large, the 49 acres is within. And it shows the various residential zonings surrounding this property on all sides. There is no agricultural zoning contiguous to the site. There is some remaining agricultural zoning in the area that hasn't been zoned yet, but again, this property is stubbed by legally platted subdivided properties having various residential zoning. The bulk regulations of the R15 zoning district are shown here. It is a minimum lot size of 15,000. Again, these are minimums of what you can do. As Austin stated, there's nothing, well, Austin didn't say this, but there's nothing that says you can't exceed these regulations, which we're doing. So, well, although there are minimums listed here, I want to be clear that our plan, which is being conditioned as a part of this zoning, exceeds these requirements. There are 15,000 square foot lots in our plan. I want to be clear and fair, but our minimum lot sizes exceed these requirements. The density is well under the permitted density. Setbacks are typically the same, and the reason we've set it up that way is, as we mentioned previously, is that's the exact same format essentially as Forest Meadows, which is the property immediately to the east. Those are 20,000 square foot lots, 100-foot wide minimum lot sizes. So we structured our lot sizes off of that. This is the project that came before you guys in February of 2013. Forgive my dating, it's well out there. We've lived a long time here in 20,224, but obviously, this became before the board. My opinion that this project or this subdivision largely complied or did 100% comply with the city zoning ordinance subregs and various other codes, but we did hear some opposition from the neighbors. So what we did is we took that to heart, we listened to it, we heard, and we went back and we looked to see how we could address some of these things. In the time since February 13th and now, we met, thanks to Mr. Dale Bellflower and some other individuals, helped facilitate neighborhood meetings that we held with, I believe, Vernon Edwards' house, perhaps. Was it Vernon's house? Vernon Edwards' house. So that was on 8/14, and we presented a revised plan because what we heard from this plan was there were a couple of items. The overwhelming concern was the environmental impact of this plan to the hill and drainage associated with the southeast quadrant of the property. That was what we heard resounding. There were other items that we've addressed as well, but that was the big thing. So prior to the April meeting, we said, okay, how can we address this? What can we do? John and Chris met with Ben, came up with a revised plan that reduced the subdivision from 80 lots to 55 lots. So 31% reduction in lots. To protect the drainage and the topography and the ecology, really, of the area of concern of the neighbors, 7 estate lots were formed at the southeast corner, which is the area in trees on this proposal, with this specific intent to be low-impact development of single-family estate residential lots. And those are governed by our covenants on the restrictions, how you can do, what you can clear, what you cannot clear. All those parameters are in our conditions. So in doing so, we also went in and added 6.8 acres of common open space, primarily along Short Fork Creek. The blue that you see is not the creek, that's the FEMA's floodplain. We'll talk more about that later. 6.8 acres common open space, which is 13%, which exceeds the city's requirements by and far for the most stringent common open space requirements. And in addition to that 6.8 acres, we have the 18.48 or 18.5 acres of tree preservation area, those 7 estate lots that make up an additional 38% that was intended specifically to save those ecological areas that were very important to the neighbors and us, obviously, through working through the plan. So that basic math, we're reserving 40, almost 50% of the site in various forms of preservation, whether it be common open space or passive open space for ecological purposes. So that proposal, I want to get back to it, but one of the things you'll see, the common open space has more to it as well. That minimum on that common open space is 110 foot wide. It goes up beyond that. But, so that's creating a 110-foot wide buffer between the lots along Short Fork Creek and Milam Country. 110, again, 135 in some cases. Then the lots that are adjoining at Single Tree Drive have the additional buffers that are in place that are prescribed by the city zoning ordinance. We're not looking to change those. So when we look at the revised plan, this is important because the comprehensive land use plan talks about density. Density, how many units applied to an acre. The highlighted section is Crestview Point. It's 1.12 units per acre. Now, that's cumulative across all sizes of lots. That's how many lots. We have 55 lots among 49 acres. In comparison, I can't zoom into this, but Forest Meadows, there's four phases shown, has an average to the right there. You can see 1.47 average. It ranges from 1.17 to 1.75 Forest Meadows density. And then we get into Notting Hill, Lakes of Cedar Grove, just for context, Cedar Brook. Hit Milam Country immediately to our north is 0.88 units to the acre average density, 0.86 and 0.89, but average is 0.88. Heritage Oaks is 0.57. And then Loma Vista, of course, is much higher at almost 5 units to the acre. When you look at all of that, the overall density, average density for this acre, including all these subdivisions, is 1.66 units to the acre. Again, we're at 1.12. When we start playing with the numbers by removing the different subdivisions, so Loma Vista is at the top end, and then we would remove Crestview. It's the average density in the district without our subdivisions, 1.36, without Loma Vista. When we exclude just Crestview, the average density actually goes up to 1.7. And when we exclude Loma Vista and Heritage Oaks, the Loma Vista is the highest, Heritage Oaks being the lowest. The average density in the subdivision in the area, immediate area, is 1.43. And again, we're at 1.1 units to the acre, and the comprehensive land use plan recommended 2 to 3 units to the acre. So we are in line and below every other subdivision, with the exception of Milam Country and Heritage Oaks in the neighborhood, 1.12 units to the acre. So that is a brief overview. I have a lot of data in here that we can go through with that talk about our lot sizes and their variations. But again, thing I want to make clear is we're conditioning our rezoning. Typically, rezonings don't have plans associated with them, but we are bringing this preliminary plan together as a condition. So if this body recommends approval of the rezoning as recommended by the comp plan, you're not going to get a bait and switch later where Chris sells or John sells the property and somebody comes in and tries to develop this plan that you guys didn't like. They can't do that. Austin spoke to it. The next step is to come in with the preliminary plat where they actually file it and they have to comply. So in that, it's very much like a planned unit development. To carry it one step farther, whereas we're conditioning our rezoning on this plan, we also have private conditions and restrictions. Our heated floor areas exceed the floor areas of Forest Meadows. They certainly exceed the floor areas of Thousand Oaks and Milam Country for their covenants, but those covenants are rather dated. So I don't, that's not disparaging those covenants by means, but the evolution, homes have gotten larger, right? So we exceed all of the home sizes in the area. We have other stipulations that for garage placement, all of that. And they were all founded off Forest Meadows plan because that was the most modern plan. So we basically took Forest Meadows and built upon it with our covenant. So not only will you have a conditioned plat that this is what you'll see, but you'll also have covenants associated with it that will list these conditions on the plat that'll restrict those items already addressed and what can be done on the larger estate lots in the preservation area. So there's a concern that, well, you create the estate lots, what happens if somebody goes in there and says he clears it all? Well, the covenants, the HOA documents won't allow it. The ACC will have special provisions for those lots with the intent to limit the percentage of clearing of the overall site. So that, in a nutshell, is where we are. It's a drastic change from where we were in February of last year. Again, 80 lots versus 55 lots. Common open space, 110-foot buffers, and any buffers that we haven't talked about comply with the city ordinance. And the last thing I'll say is this plan 100% not only complies with the city's zoning ordinance, it complies with the city's subdivision regulations, and it complies with International Building Code. We have 2 points of connection, Single Tree Drive, Keenan Drive. Your subdivision regulations, and I can read the quote out of the regulations, require extension of those roads. So that's what we're doing. And then I got lost in my own thought there, but I'm trying to think of what the last item I wanted to mention was. The construction access that we talked about still in play. There will be no construction access going through Forest Meadows, no construction access going through Single Tree Milam Country at all. It's a designated construction access that you guys saw at the last meeting, carrying all the way out to Mackingville through Danny James property. And then at the points of connection at Single Tree and Keenlan during the construction phase, that road will not only be barricaded, but it'll be a physical barrier of mounding of dirt, so nobody can even drive around the barricade. And then when the curbs go in, soil cement comes in, that's when we'll remove those. And we can still put a gate up. So we're doing everything we can to keep even the white vans from driving through, Forest Meadows. We're doing, so all that's still in place. It was a big topic of conversation back early in the year in the first rendition that was withdrawn We fixed it with the last version. I think you guys were really satisfied or pleased with that, perhaps satisfied, but pleased with that. So it's still in place. That's in a nutshell where we are. And so I'd really love the opportunity to answer questions and detail specific questions that each of you guys might have and how this plan differs from what it did, or even details on how further steps we're going to preserve and protect or what have you.
So are there any questions for the applicant?
I do, and I guess I'm going to address both you and Austin initially, because this is the first I've heard about the conditional. It's a conditional approval with this plan. It's kind of like a PUD. I don't think we've ever done anything like that before, have we?
I'm not sure if you have, but the board sometimes will strike uses from the C2 that they're not pleased.
Okay.
For the property exactly, but on the applicant's request, we can condition the plat to run with it.
Okay, and then I didn't see that in the proposed motion, but we can, when we make the motion, if there's a motion to approve or whatever it is, it can be made conditional upon the plat that's presented being the plat that governs.
Absolutely, yeah, at the request of the
That governs the
applicant.
rezoning. Okay, that's new to me. I did not know that was, I didn't know that was in our bag of tricks, I guess.
Thank you. The reason we're doing that way is because we don't have multiple uses. We don't have office uses or commercial uses or any smaller lots or anything that the zoning ordinance would already allow. So we're doing straight zoning, complying with your code, and then conditioning the plat.
Okay. And that frankly was a concern of mine. I didn't see, I mean, I know we've got the conservation, I guess I would say the tree and topography preservation. I've heard it called a conservation easement, but I haven't seen anything like that
There's
in
some-
writing, but.
forget-
No, I was just saying, I mean, so if we condition it upon this plat, it would be as laid out with the lots, as set forth with the large lots left for preservation, but I guess, there's no language, I guess, we're just doing a plat, there's no language that preserves that as that green space.
From our perspective, that language will come with that plat section. So we'll have the HOA documentation professionally drafted and those provisions in there
Okay.
to govern how those lots and various other matters of development.
And that can be addressed at the preliminary plat
Yes,
approval
that's the
stage.
appropriate time if I'm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that was my question. Because you had mentioned it about restrictions and things for that preservation area. And I was looking through all of the documents not there, so my assumption is, I think you just answered it, would come at that first plat.
It would be a condition that we're expecting or we would agree to. Naturally, it's going to come. We're going to have HOA documents regardless, right? So those documentation will accompany the plat. What we do is we record that instrument on the plat, should the plat even transfer ownership. Or a downturn in the economy happen and the world go upside down, a bank purchase the plat, that documentation is referenced on the plat, so then the bank can't say, well, we didn't know anything about it.
Goes with it, right?
That's something we started doing post-pandemic, because that was happening a lot.
Any other questions for that?
Thank you. Thank you all.
Anyone in support or against this application, please come forward and state your name and address.
You can move it for me. My name's Dale Bellflower. I live on 1385 Thousand Oaks Drive. He pulls this up. I'm going to be summarizing what the four following speakers following me will be going into a little more detail. Next slide. We are opposed to the Crestview rezoning from A to R15 for the following reasons. There's no social or economic change in the neighborhood. Majority of the homes that surround the proposed rezoning lot are from 1 acre to 1.5 acres, and even larger when you go further into Milam country. And the only change that occurred is those small number of R20 homes in Forest Meadows. If you look around that acre perimeter, that perimeter where Thousand Oaks and Heritage Oaks is, and Milam and Phase 1 and Phase 2 is, you have larger lots from an acre to 1.5 acres, all the way up to 4 acres. And just a small number of R20 homes in the area. Now, second point is that the City of Hernando's development plan and Hernando's general development plan of 2007 to 2027 states that single-family density residential developments should be located on collector or major arterial streets. That's page 23. The city's plan indicates that McInville-Sweeney Road as the peripheral arterial road. By definition, next page. By definition, in addition, the City of Hernando's development plan states by definition, a local street such as Singletree or Keenan is not a thoroughfare for the purpose of this plan. All highways, arterial, and collector streets are considered to be major streets. That's out of section 2, pages 21 through 22. South Creek. Those erosions, the erosion is growing as every drop of rain is put in there today. There are arterial, dry variances are running over today with this rain that we've had. Those are their arterial variances that are feeding into that lake on the Forest Meadows side of the property. But here's the tragedy. If you look to the south of the creek, where Thousand Oaks is located, you'll see our tax dollars being put to use. They're in there putting in those rocks to control the erosion. It will not control the rate of flow, but it will control and stabilize the creek. So one of the things that we are saying is that the city must require the current developers or property owners to stabilize and not allow additional water to go into that creek. That's gonna be followed up here by another speaker. The topography and the proposed tree cover, I don't care what kind of plans we have with an HAO, cannot be guaranteed. If I go in there and buy one of those estate lots, if I want to cut down all the trees and plant a garden, who's gonna stop me? You may fuss at me, you may fine me, but who's gonna stop us? Who's gonna stop that homeowner? Developer must request wetland permits before changes to the wetlands. They must request a wildlife habitat survey for all species, especially the bats in that neighborhood. They control the mosquitoes. And they must request the construction stormwater permits. Next question is, who's going to maintain the dry variances? Who will get the permits if the developer crosses the creek? The traffic in that area is subject to increasing at least 2 to 3 times a day by those 160 new vehicles. Now, next slide. I'm not going to go into the details of these next 4 pages. They were presented by Kevin Wright the last time we got together. Poor Kevin cannot make this meeting tonight because he has colon cancer. So we're not going to go into these 4 details, but yet I am requesting that these be entered in and the entire presentation be entered into the minutes of this meeting. Now, I will be followed by Tommy McDougal. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tommy McDonald, just like the hamburgers, and I live at 1060 Milam Lane. And my residence is zoned agricultural. I don't know about everybody else on Milam, but mine is agricultural. I'd like to thank the commission for hearing this thing. This is the third time I think y'all have put up with this, so y'all doing a good job. But Kevin Wright, and I was going to say some of the same things that Dale said, but Kevin Wright couldn't be here, but he did present, and you can look at the minutes from the February meeting, what he wanted done, the surveys and the Corps of Engineer approval and that kind of stuff. I basically oppose the thing, the rezoning, for traffic reasons. We're asking, or they are asking, 49 acres to be zoned R15. So in the long run, 49 acres could be turned into a lot of lots, which would mean a lot of additional traffic in the long run. So I don't think anything much has been said about the rest of the property, but that's why I'm against rezoning. And next is Mr. Tate.
Hi, my name's Ramon Tate, and I live at 1130 Milam Cove. I was here, spoke to you once before, back in February, I believe. One of the things I wanted to describe to you was something that I've experienced in my background. Okay, I worked for Mississippi DOT for 28 years in the right-of-way division. I'm a certified general appraiser. Did that for 28 years with MDOT, retired, did it for 4 years contracting, and now I work for the Army Corps of Engineers. Now, I've been in real estate since 1979, survey, mapping, title, and appraisal. As part of my duties, I worked with counties, cities, and government chartered entities to make sure that they were staying compliant with federal regulations when it came to their valuations, whenever they had to get into acquiring right-of-way or doing valuations for their various projects. Now, in my experience, I encountered a lot of things that naturally you don't forget over time. A lot of things dealing with drainage, a lot of things dealing with topography, and also right-of-way needs. Things when the government entity, whether it's the city, county, or the state, has to go in and deal with problems. I dealt with quite a few that involved drainage, okay? Drainage issues, they have a tendency to cause what are called slides. That's where you have a steep slope and some of the dirt basically breaks away and it just slides down towards the roadway. I've dealt with more than a few of those where we had to go in and buy additional right-of-way so we can reslope, or we would do what we call a benching, which you might think of that as kind of a terrace situation, where you terrace it to make the slopes more stable so they hold together. On the drainage side, I've dealt with bridges, culverts, and one of the things I learned quite a bit was the force of Mother Nature and the power of water. Water can do a lot of things, and you get to where you notice what water can do. Scouring is something that that water does. Working for the Corps of Engineers now, we deal with that quite a bit on the Mississippi River, where it scours away the bank and the river wants to go where it wants to go. The Corps has what they call a revetment program, where basically, for lack of a better way of describing it, might think of it in terms of a concrete quilt that's laid on
bottom of the river and up the bank to the ordinary high water mark to keep the bank from scouring out. Now, virtually all creeks, rivers, streams, anything that's got flowing water is going to have scouring. And of course, Short Fork Creek has scouring. And if I could, I'd like to show a picture. This is something at Short Fork Creek that I think is very important to see because it underlines exactly what I'm trying to describe. Okay, let's go back. This is AAA. And there's a file, there's the scour history. You see that? It's just a Word document, okay? And if you can just scroll down to the last page of that document. Okay, right there. This is Short Fork Creek. This is an aerial on the, just to the right, if you see that yellow line, that vertical yellow line on the far right, that's the property line of this proposed development. Short Fork Creek that you see right there, those are plainly easy to see scour areas where the creek has scoured out the banks of Short Fork Creek. Now, to give you some sense of scale, if you can go back up to the first page. Okay, now right there, that is from October 2004. Now, what those pins represent are markers where I put pins using Google Earth. I put these pins showing this is the approximate course of Short Fork Creek in 2004 using GPS coordinates. Now, if you'll scroll down, go further, keep going. I have kind of a history, but I think it doesn't need to go for every one. Go to the one, let's see, right here, right there. Those pins that you see, that's where the middle of Short Fork Creek was in 2004. Today, that shows you how much the course of the creek has moved and how much has been scoured in those two locations. Now, that's very close to the proposed detention pond on the northeast corner of the proposed development. Now, one of the things that's going to happen with this development, you're going to clear off a lot of vegetative material on the ground. You're going to have a lot of impermeable surface, and that's going to increase the rate of drainage, how fast the water gets into the creek. Now, I realize there are detention ponds, okay? But still, you're talking about a lot of impermeable surface that you're going to have a lot of water coming into. And you increase the rate of flow in Short Fork Creek, the scouring is going to increase. You increase the water, you increase the speed of the water, it's going to increase the scouring. And you can see just from those pins where the middle of Short Fork Creek was in '04, and you can see it in this photo very easily where the creek is today. That's, in fact, I think that photo, yeah, April 2023. So that's not the most recent, but if you go out there and look at it, you can see the scouring. It's very easy to see how much it's scoured the banks. Now, there is a video on that jump drive I gave to you. It's the biggest file on there. Now, this is just to show you, this is after a fairly moderate rain. The water has gotten higher than that, significantly higher. There are places at multiple points up and down the creek where the ground is collapsing from the water coming from other locations on both sides of the creek. Now, obviously, you get into this situation, I could sit here and talk for hours on all the different things that come into play. One of the big ones, and this is huge, and that's for the city of Hernando. I have personal experience dealing with governmental entities when we call them, at MDOT, we call them local public agencies. And part of my job was to help them make sure they were in compliance with federal requirements so that they properly documented their valuations when they had to buy additional right-of-way, okay? And one of the things I saw was where cities inherit any shortcomings of the developers. If the developers left something that was not fully taken care of, when the city took dedication of that subdivision for the streets and the utilities, it became the city's responsibility to take care of things when they went wrong. On bridges, on box culverts, I saw scouring. You'd be surprised what water can do. That's all I can say. If you work around it enough, you know what I'm talking about. I've seen box culverts, I've seen wing walls, concrete wing walls where they were scoured out from behind, and they were being weakened to the point of collapse. So, and of course, with the state, there were box culverts we had to go in by additional right-of-way to deal with that issue. And as I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, it's very expensive to do. So it's something that has to be looked at critically and very carefully, because there's no question there's significant drainage issues to be dealt with here. And anything that's not taken care of by the developer, the city and the taxpayers of Hernando are going to be dealing with that cost. And it's not small. It's not small. Thank you very much.
Any questions for?
Hi. Karen's going to give you all a paper for me. My name's Priscilla Harbor. I live at 1485 Milam Lane, and this is surrounded on three sides by South Fork Creek. We're very concerned about this additional water that he talked about, and one of the past videos did show how water sits on top of our land already when we have rainfalls like that. So that's why one reason we're concerned about so much water being added to the creek. But I'm here to talk about the new proposal. Understandably, I'll refer to that map for you in just a minute, but I wanted to make sure y'all had it. Understandably, the mayor and the alderman sent this back to you to review, to decide if the new proposal is more acceptable to approve rezoning. We don't feel that it is. We feel it is not more acceptable for rezoning. At first glance, if you can show my first picture. This picture that he's going to show first is what the ridge looks like now. The top corner is the ridge, and that doesn't even show how much it rises. On this side, you see the pond. That's the one near McInville that is yellow because of the mud from the Compel water flow, from when they did the Compel Church, that development. So next he's going to show you the new proposal, that what it's going to do to that. And you still see the ridge in the top corner, and you see the fewer houses, like they said. I mean, not fewer houses, fewer lots. You see the thing I wanted you to see. At first glance, it appeared to be the answer to all our problems, but it appeared to address many of our concerns. But it's very misleading. All right, let's see. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. In this new proposal, like I said, we thought that top part, and you see that on the proposal thing where it says it's labeled as a tree preserve. If you can go to the next thing, it shows that. See how it says tree preservation area? This is not what I consider a tree preservation area. Let me see if I can get this, I'm sorry. What it actually is those are the 5 lots that you see on that drawing that are outlined in green, the 5 big lots. So all of that ridge is still going to be available to be sold to individuals or developers who could go in and subdivide if it's rezoned to R15. So that could go back from 55 lots back up to 80 to 100, because they could put in all 15,000 square feet lots, 1/3 of an acre. And so that's our concern. That misrepresents a tree preserve in every way, in our opinion anyway. So let me get to that. All right, so we just hope the landowners will not want to remove too many trees. That was their answer. They said that it was a preserve because they hope individual owners will decide not to remove those trees. But like I said, if it's zoned R15, if those landowners do want to go in and subdivide it, they do want to remove trees, they will have no trouble doing that. So that's not a tree preserve. It doesn't protect any trees. Secondly, density. You see those houses in yellow. This is also misrepresented. The average lot size that was listed when we met with Mr. Brady was listed as 30,000 square feet for the average. And he admitted to me that they used all of that tree preserve land and the common area that you see in green next to the creek to come up with this 30,000 as an average. If you look at those lots in yellow, you'll see the majority of them, 25 out of 50 of those lots, and the numbers are circled, are 15,000 square feet, 1/3 of an acre. There are only a few that are 30,000 square feet, and that is still less than a half an acre. And all of our lots, as Mr. Bellflower said, all of our lots in Milam Country and Milam Lane and Thousand Oaks are 1 to 4 acres. So that is not comparable to the surrounding area. The surrounding area, which is 3 sides of it, is still zoned as agriculture. So it will lower our property values, and what you actually see proposed is almost half being around 1/3 of an acre. Like I said, even if all were 30,000 square feet, less than half an acre, that would still be not in keeping with the surrounding property, and it would lower our values. I was told by the engineer that we shouldn't be concerned about that because DeSoto County is constantly increasing in value. But I think any appraiser will agree with you that if you have smaller houses on smaller lots within a mile or two of your property, they can be used as comps and they can lower your own property value. So that's one of our concerns there too. All right. More dense areas too can bring other problems like more noise pollution, more traffic, more population just in general, and that could negatively affect our property values too. All right, thirdly, my third objection to this new proposal is relying on 2 retention ponds to control the water flow in the creek. You see those highlighted in green and where they're right next to the creek on each side of their properties. They've admitted that asphalt and concrete will create more water flow into this creek. That's a given. They told us they planned on 1 to 2 buckets per household of water just from a regular rainfall, and that they allotted for 2 lots, 2 bucketfuls per lot, per these 50 lots, to drain into the street drains, go through pipes and go into the retention ponds, and then be slowly released into the creek. We question how effective that can be. For one thing, what if the street drains get filthy, which I know has happened in some neighborhoods near here, not in Hernando, but in South Haven, and that it ended up clogging up the pipes that went to the retention ponds, so they were not effective, so they had overflow and flooded some big areas in South Haven. Here, for us, we don't feel like it's right next to the creek. If you look at the retention pond that's on that picture, it's up closer to the top. That is a little tributary from the creek that goes into their first property, their first lot. You see on 2 sides of that retention pond, I don't understand what's to keep that from eroding, even, because it's dug deep, but then why wouldn't those 2 sides go into and create even more erosion right there and not serve as a true retention pond? So we question whether these retention ponds can be effective. They told us when we met with them that retention ponds are only effective if you keep out the filament, if there's not erosion coming in, filling it up, and only if there's not too much overgrowth. And their only answer to making sure that those retention ponds didn't have that happen was to institute an HOA. And I really question the HOAs. One of the examples that was given to me was, in that meeting, was the woods in Collierville. And I actually happened to have built in the woods in Collierville in 1976, and they did have an HOA. The HOA did suggest what size trees should be cut down, but there was no enforcement of it. The builders told me, don't worry about it. If we say we need it to be able to build the house there, we can take down any size we need. We just need to get a permit. So I don't know how effective an HOA is really going to be able to be to prevent people from cutting down trees. Even if they only sell one of those big lots to a single home, if they sell it, to many homes, we're in trouble. So the retention ponds, we really don't see as a solution, or even a professional HOA, because HOAs, like I say, can't always enforce what they try to enforce. And if they put a lien on it, then the damage is already done. The people go and do what they want to do, and they have a lien on their house that they have to take care of years later if they ever sell their house. So HOAs are not always effective in the governing body. All right. Let me see. I got one more page for you. All right. I was actually in another HOA that would place liens on property owners' houses, and even the liens didn't stop people from doing what they wanted to do. All right, I have a couple of issues with what was said today in here. The conditional upon this plan. So if we went ahead and did R15 conditional upon this plan going through, I hope you see that this plan is not really much better than the first one, because even though it is fewer houses, it still has the great possibility of becoming as many as they had originally. So the density would not be any better. The tree preserve is not a true tree preserve. We don't know that any of those trees would be protected. So I would hope that you would help me see that those are just not, that's not a good plan to even accept conditional under this plan. And I had really hoped, when we first saw this proposal and it said a tree preserved, we thought that was the answer, and that, the ridge would be preserved and we wouldn't have all these problems with the drainage. But with the drainage, what if we have more than 1 to 2 buckets of water per household? And you're still talking about 50 households there in addition to whatever comes from the ridge. And then if they build on the ridge, even more. So if we have more than 1 to 2 buckets of water, the retention ponds are not going to be able to work and hold that water in for any time. I would question where Mr. Brady said that all the houses around are larger than our houses. From what I understand, the proposed houses are 2,400 square foot minimum. Mine is bigger than that, and mine is one of the smaller houses compared to some in Milam, whatever country, and Thousand Oaks has much bigger houses. So I don't understand that reference. He can clear that up for me, but the houses are. We expect these houses to be smaller than many of these surrounding houses, and I already addressed that. All right. I also didn't understand one unit in the numbers that he gave is 1.1 unit per acre. When the plot shows you that if you allow 15,000 square foot lots, you're having 3 units per acre, and many of those in that plot, 25 out of 50 are a third of an acre. So I don't understand that's 1 unit per acre. The numbers have been skewed so often, like with the 30,000. The only way they were able to come up with 30,000 square foot as an average lot was to include all of that tree preserve, I may have already said that, all of that tree preserve and all of the common area along the creek, which wouldn't even be used in square footage for houses or lots. So it shouldn't be used as to truly represent a true average. So I would guess the true average is, well, what I figured was between 15,000 square feet to 18,000 square feet. So not even close to half an acre. All right, finally, I know y'all are ready for this. Finally, I do want to thank you. Y'all have put a lot of time in this, and we appreciate everything you do for Hernando. I ask that you again vote to disapprove the change in rezoning. We all agree that the landowners do have a right to develop their land, but not in a way to create so much destruction and disruption to neighboring landowners and community. They bought land zoned agriculture. Please require them to develop by agricultural restrictions. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Okay, thank you. Karen Goldman is coming up next. She's our traffic person. Well advised for traffic.
Hello. I'm Karen Goldman, and I live at 1430 Milam Lane. I'm here to oppose the rezoning of the agricultural property to R15. One of my main concerns is traffic issue. I'm a retired law enforcement officer, so traffic could be a big issue for me. Milam Lane has a whole lot of pedestrian traffic. We have walkers, joggers, people with strollers, kids in the neighborhood who constantly are on that street. 2 years ago, roughly about 2 years ago, I requested with the city to have a sign put up because we are a dead-end street. We had so much traffic coming through that I'm assuming people thought they can get to Nottingham through us. And I was really concerned about our pedestrian traffic, our children that live down there. So the city came in and put a dead-end sign on. It completely reduced the amount of traffic that we got coming down through there. We just don't have the large traffic anymore. If anyone on our street attempts to leave our neighborhood early in the morning, we have a problem trying to get out onto Milam because we have people that are the school traffic going south and northbound traffic. We have commuters heading to 69. It's hard for us to maneuver out. If we do get up there to turn onto McInville and a school bus, or of course the school bus only comes down to Singletree. They can't come all the way down because they can't turn around. If they, or UPS, any time of the day, if UPS, school bus, anything like that attempts to turn down on Milam Lane, we have to back up to let them make that turn. It's too close. You can't, larger vehicles can't make the turn onto Milam Lane. So that's a problem we run into now. It's not really a big problem. We can back up and let them in. So with our current situation, with the proposal of this new development, 55 homes, you're looking at possibly a minimum of 110 cars that are going to be coming down with the picture you see. Majority of them are probably going to be heading down Singletree and coming out Milam Lane, going to school or wherever to try to get to 69 to commute to wherever they need to go. When you're looking at that, I foresee a lot of traffic on Milam Lane. If we run into that traffic of the UPS truck or the school bus, whatever, if you have all these additional cars, you're not going to be able to back up to let them turn. They're going to have to widen the street. There's just no way about it. As of right now, 2 vehicles would not be able to meet on Singletree. That street's going to have to be widened. If you're doing that, a lot of the streets in Milam Country, a lot of the residents have already lost their property in the backyard because of the creek getting bigger. So they've lost up to 10 feet or more. Now you're losing front yard. So we're reducing our property to accommodate this subdivision. Not only are we going to have their cars coming out our way, if they don't want to go down to Keenlan and go out Thousand Oaks, some may go out Jaybird. Those people in Forest Meadows, they're going to cut through us. So we're not just having this subdivision's traffic, we're going to have the back traffic also. That's going to be a whole lot. If they're going to widen streets or add sidewalks or whatever, this is going to start getting rough. Now, in my law enforcement career, my entire law enforcement career, I did direct school traffic. You got an officer out there directing traffic. I can tell you right now, the officer that's directing traffic is going to be a nightmare because he's going to have traffic coming down McInville southbound. He's going to have traffic coming off of Thousand Oaks, the traffic that's coming off of Milam. Right now, as the high school being there, we have seniors who leave school different times of the day. So during the afternoon, it might not be quite as bad. But then eventually, we're going to have cars coming that's going to 69, going to the new high school, and people are still going to be trying to get out. And it's just going to be a nightmare for us, the residents on Thousand Oaks, us, Milam Country, just trying to make that. just trying to leave our homes. Like I said, I just oppose, just the traffic alone to me, just is gonna be a problem that I see. So, thank you for your consideration. Any questions? No. Thank you, guys.
Good evening. My name is Amy Stewart. I live at 1438 Notting Hill Cove West. I'm requesting a vote of no in regards to the Crestview development on the basis of stormwater. I have served on Notting Hill's HOA for approximately 10 years. I have lived at my residence since February of 2008. I am one of those homes that's contributed to moving the pin on the Short Fork Creek. I have seen a lot of stormwater through serving as an HOA officer. We have, as a subdivision, spent approximately $100,000 of the HOA money for Notting Hill strictly on stormwater, soil erosion, stabilization of the creek. And a large amount of that has been spent on rock to stabilize the creek. Since I have lived in Notting Hill, I have seen Banbury flood, and I have seen the creek rise to dangerous levels many, many times. I'm concerned when the developer says that they are going to use the same density as Forest Meadows subdivision, because if you look at the homes that have been built since 2004, when those original markers were in play, I've been dealing as an officer with the repercussions of that. While I love living where I live, I love the subdivision, we have had to increase our HOA fees this past year, mostly on the basis of paying for storm water damage and soil erosion damage. So I ask that you please consider this when you make your decision. Thank you.
Ms. Stewart, have you discussed it with the engineer for their project or anyone else? Has anyone else come to y'all and discussed
Yes.
the plan? Okay.
And we've walked it. We've looked at it. We've looked at the ecosystems, the different habitats. It's a big concern. I'm all for, new subdivisions. I've lived here my whole life. I've seen a lot of changes. I know we live in a great place, and I welcome new people, but it really concerns me that we're putting a subdivision inside of a subdivision. When you look at the guidelines, these are not this subdivision is not connected to major thoroughfares. It's not connected to McInville. It's not connected to Sweeney. So to me, that in itself should be a no vote. I mean, that's from the document. But the stormwater, I'm all for progress, but the stormwater has been a thorn in my side for years, and it hurts my pocketbook. Because I'm a private citizen paying, and when they did that Forest Meadow Phase 5, it pushed that creek over the edge. And now we're going to do another subdivision. That creek, you're going to destroy homes. It's going to flood. It's one thing for a street to flood, but when you're destroying $500,000 homes, and there's a lot of homes along that creek, there's already homes along that creek that were put on floaters, because it is in a flood zone. And when you have to put them on floaters to keep them from flooding in Phase 5 of Forest Meadows, it's a storm waiting to happen. And I don't mean the kind that rain brings. Thank you.
My name is Christy Galdlock, and I live at 1255 Milam Lane, and I'm going to discuss, remember your name, what you just discussed but Mr. Brady kind of glossed over, we're going to go back to the policy of what an R15, R12, R20 location should be. On the top of what you have is his developmental plan, and I have given you the 2 access points that he is requesting, one on Singletree and one on West Keenlan Drive. Those are the 2 only access points that he has. And if you flip forward, you look at our Hernando comprehensive plan, it does say that in the comprehensive plan, it is zoned that yellow for our residential. With that also being said, our residential has stipulations of where they should be located. And it does say that they should be on major arterial roads or collector roads. If you'll keep flipping, you'll see the list of collector roads. I went ahead and highlighted those for you. Singletree is not one of those streets, and West Keenlan Drive is not one of those streets as well. It is completely inappropriate to develop a new subdivision on the backside of 2 existing subdivisions for the purpose of a lot of what these people have been talking about, mainly the traffic, safety, access to emergency personnel, safety of residents within the communities that you're passing through to get to your community. There's a reason that Hernando developed this plan as a whole, and it should be addressed as a whole. So as his development stands, it is inappropriate based on the comprehensive plan where anything zoned R should be located. Any questions? Thank you.
Anyone else in support or against this item, please come forward.
John Stevenson, 1589 Johnston Road, Hernando. You know, I've known John Reeves for many years. He's a friend. Never done any business with him, but I have built houses in his developments, specifically Spring Creek. And he's one of the finest developers I know. And so I've heard a lot of people say, is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? In my experience, John Reeves always does what he says he's going to do. And the other thing, a lot of these people, I know a lot of these people, went to church with Mr. McDonald. I'm in Rotary with Mr. Brellflower. Heck, I sold my house to Amy Payne. Used to live in that house. These are fine people, and what I hear a lot of is anxiety, fear of what possibly could happen. You know, they're trying to stop this. They're trying to stop this development because they're concerned about what it's going to do to their property. But in doing so, they're depriving Mr. Reeves of his property rights. And so there has to be a balance, right? And that's what government is for, is to help all of us find balance between the competing interests. That's what y'all's job is, to help these folk find balance between these competing interests. And it's not an easy job. But like the stormwater issue, I'll address specifically because I do property development as well and home building. And this seems like a big issue here. And that's governed by city engineering, and that's governed by MDEQ, Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality. And MDEQ just made huge changes to what is and is not allowed on stormwater based on EPA regulations that have changed under the Biden administration. It's much tighter than it used to be. So for Mr. Reeves and Cory Brady here to be able to get that stormwater permit they're going to have to get, they're going to have to measurably reduce the amount of water that's flowing into that, immediately sheet draining into that creek. The development based on new MDEQ regulations should reduce the flow of water into the creek and actually help the problem these folks are feeling their anxiety about. Now, it's, you know, they'll say, oh, I don't believe that, and I get it. You know, why should they? You know, well, I'm just a guy up here giving my opinion, and that's all it is my opinion. But I'm also a guy who has to build neighborhoods and has to deal with MDEQ on these things. And I know my costs have substantially gone up because of their requirements. So all I'm saying is this. You know, these folks absolutely have a right to address their concerns. And I think there's appropriate ways that they will be addressed, mainly through state regulation, MDEQ, and city engineering. I cannot speak to the issue of traffic. I don't know enough about it as far as this property is, but I do know it. I was running a quick calculation based on his first project and what he's submitting now. He is working hard to work with these folks, because I can do it quick. He's reduced the amount of revenue I see coming off of this property by $2.2 million based on what I sell lots for right now. And if that's not somebody trying to work with somebody, I don't know what it is. So I'm just here to support his application. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Teresa Pino. I live at 1335 Milam Lane. I back up to the creek. Some of that scouring's in my backyard. I'm opposed to the proposed rezoning change from agricultural to R15. The property in question is not suitable for this type of zoning, given all the problems that will arise and the negative impact it will have on the existing homeowners and their property, and most importantly, the environment. Thousand Oaks, Milam Country are stable, sought-after properties. They don't go on the market very often, and when they do, a lot of times they're sold before they even hit the market. There's not been any major or minor changes in our area that would warrant a zoning change. I think that's one of the things that is required, that there be some kind of major change to the area. We haven't seen it. I've been there since '93. R15 is not compatible with the current surrounding properties. It's not suitable for this unique piece of land. Zone A, it's Zone A. It can be developed as Zone A. I'm not against a property owner making use of their property. You bought A, develop it as A. When I was reading all the different zonings, descriptions from the city of Hernando, one of the things it said that A and AR were sometimes used for was to have less impact on a piece of property that had unique environmental properties, like it was describing this piece of land. The ridge, the creek, it's basically a wetland. It actually is watershed for Short Fork Creek, for this whole area. Short Fork Creek is the tributary that carries all of our water drainage to the Coldwater River. If you walk back there now, I guarantee you right now, with the rain we've had today, it's going to be knee-deep in the middle of this property where they're proposing all those houses sit. I had Mr. Brady look me in the eye and tell me that my 1 acre land would disperse just as much water into that creek as one of his acres on his proposed property with 3 houses on it. I don't see it, because I know on my property, my 1 acre, I got a modest house, and I got a garage. I got a bunch of mature oak trees. Did you know that oak trees drink 100 to 150 gallons of water a day? A day. They're soaking that water up. I've got open land, I've got garden. Water drains through my property, and it recharges our aquifer. I know a lot of people have been spouting off quoting your comprehensive plan. Well, I've got some of those too. Let me get back. It is a unique piece of property. If you've been out there, if you laid eyes on it, you'll know. A zoning would allow the property to be developed and to remain mostly intact if care is taken to protect the watershed, its watershed, and Short Fork Creek. In reading through the comprehensive plan on page 69, one of the goals for the city is to encourage the development of an environmentally sound city with minimum soil erosion and local flooding and pollution. The objective is to minimize flooding and pollution from runoff, reduce sedimentation of streams and other bodies of water, reduce soil erosion, and retain sufficient aquifer recharge to preserve the existing mature trees in Hernando. That's the city's words, those weren't mine. Putting 3 houses with all the concrete driveways, what swimming pools, what have you, that's a lot of water that's gonna be displaced. That's a lot of water that's gonna go straight into that creek. Any more volume, any more velocity, the folks in Forest Meadows are gonna be devastated. I mean, I've driven by there, I've looked, I was the weirdo driving down the street looking at people's backyards. They've got a mess that they're already dealing with that at some point was allowed to happen. You know, you got the city engineers, you got this, you got that. They're all supposed to tell us, oh, we're going to take care of this. Tell that to the people that are dealing with the erosion and the flooding at Forest Meadows. Somebody didn't take care of them. Short Fork Creek's not a drainage ditch. Short Fork Creek is a protected stream that drains this watershed to the Coldwater River. Like I said, Forest Meadows is already dealing with floods. I walked to a neighbor's house last week. She's got an area the size of a carport, your average size carport, that's just collapsed in. It was there when she went to bed that night, and it was gone the next morning. It's at the bottom of the creek. It just collapsed. I'm thinking, what if a child was on it? You know, what if somebody was out there when it happened? I've lost land to the creek, and I can't see how putting R15, that many houses on that wetland, you'll be doing a disservice to the surrounding area, the surrounding existing neighbors, and you'll be doing a disservice to the people that buy those lots. That land is that property is a wetland. Develop it as agricultural. I'm agricultural, Milam Country is agricultural, Short Fork is agricultural, Thousand Oaks is agricultural residential. It can be developed with single-family homes in an environmentally protective way. I don't know what else to tell you. We haven't had any major changes to the area to warrant a zoning change. Develop it as an A. I ask that you deny the zoning change and leave it as agricultural. Thank you.
Good evening. Kelvin Lake, 1717 Keenlan Drive West. I am at the dead end of where they're proposing to put the barricade, you know, to reduce traffic or keep traffic from coming through. This year, I have not been able to cut my backyard at all. My backyard is completely flooded on Keenlan Drive West. I can almost look under my fence line because my fence line, all the dirt has eroded already. It's coming off the hill right by the power lines in the common space, coming through my yard. I probably got almost a foot of grass in my backyard because my yard man can only cut my front grass because of the runoff and the erosion. We're seeing a lot of erosion. I serve on the HOA board for Forest Meadows as well, and I'm in real estate as well. I understand clearly how covenants change. I own a title company as well. Covenants can be changed by the developer or anybody who lives in that neighborhood by a majority. So I'm not 100% sold on the fact that covenants are in place to protect the trees. They could be overturned at any point by the majority. Also, the creek, if this does proceed, is there any way, you know, that the city and the developer can ensure that creek up to make sure there's no ongoing issues? That's another concern. And then the next question that I have is how long after the construction is complete are we planning on, or the city's planning on holding the bond out to make sure that everything is where it needs to be? I would love, you know, being in real estate, on a real estate brokerage, I would love to sell some of those houses, but I don't want my property value to diminish at the same time because we are seeing a lot of issues. And for those of you who come through, like today, right in front of my house, it is completely flooded right now with the amount of rain we had. So I just want to make sure that we're doing it the right way, and it doesn't affect you until it affects you. The people who don't live there, that does not live in those neighborhoods, really don't understand the impact of what's going on. It is a serious, serious problem. So I just want you all to take that into consideration from those of us who live in Forest Meadows Phase 5 and then who's in the HOA as well. Okay, thank you so much.
The erosion you're having is from the creek?
Well, what is, it's coming off of that hillside where I'm at the last house where they're planning on developing.
Right.
Yeah, so last house, Phase 5.
1717?
Yes, sir.
He's right there, yeah. That's his house.
Yes, sir. I'm the last house that was built where the.
So this is coming from the hill, though, not
Yeah,
the
it's
creek.
coming like, so, you know, they were proposing to level some of it off, and that water, we're already getting a ton of runoff already on that side. You know, Lori's and them house, I mean, it's horrible. It is horrible. So we're already getting a lot of runoff from that side anyway, but right now you can literally sit at my fence. Thank you, Lori. You can sit in my backyard right now and look under my fence. You pass those around. Literally, we can sit in our backyard and look under our fence because of the erosion we're already having. So I'm just saying, just taking into consideration, we're in bad shape as it is. We walked it the other night, and I talked to Mayor Johnston, like where we have right now those culverts under our roads, they're unsafe. They need to be replaced. So there's a lot of things that's going on in our neighborhood right now, and I just ask that you all would take that into consideration. Any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you for your time.
No, it goes from his yard to this house.
Good evening. My name is John Pino. I'm just a resident who lives on Milam Lane, south side. That's going to be adjacent to this property. I thought I was coming down here for one reason, a rezoning application. But after we get here, we find out that there's rezoning. There's conditions. There's a preliminary for a plat that are all being thrown in this together. So I don't see how you can approve that tonight when it's just a preliminary, so you don't even know exactly what they're gonna end up with. We don't know what they're gonna end up with, putting in there. They can really put in whatever they want to. The conditions, it's been made clear that conditions can be changed. Laws can be changed. We're only talking about individuals making conditions on an area, promising conditions that this won't ever happen. Well, I live in the real world. Thousand Oaks is agricultural. My home country is agricultural. I agree, the property owner should be able to develop their property, but it should be done in a way that isn't detrimental to everyone else in the area. We know what kind of problems that Forest Meadows has from talking to the few residents that I've met and talked to. Not a good thing for them. They have all kinds of problems. These are going to be problems that the city are going to have to address at some point. The scouring of the creek, the environmental, the scouring of the creek. I don't know, no one really brought that up about the scouring, but that's about to get into the sewer line. And that's going to be major consideration for the city that they're going to be responsible for, that I'm going to be responsible for. So I am against this rezoning, and that's where I stand. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Brett Davis. I live at 1875 Keenlan Drive West. I'd like to talk to you guys about the tax money. Mayor was down walking around with us and aldermen, and we were showing him different things that need to be fixed. Well, after you build a house and all the subdivisions go in, he said they get a few dollars per house. After everything is paid for, that's extra that Hernando gets to spend. Per the planning commission, you guys, I guess, would spend that money, what you need, what you don't need. Well, he said, we don't have money to fix the culvert that's caving in on Keenlan West. Now we're gonna put more cars come up and down Keenlan West, which has no curbs, which is basically a two-lane road that you're not really supposed to park on, just like the ones behind Walmart. You can kind of, they're wider, I think they're like 24-foot wide. This is a two-lane road that you're gonna have all this traffic going up and down, and Milam, that can't take the traffic. Okay, so there's more money to spend for Hernando to fix that, which we don't have, and which we're not gonna get. We saw, I was HOA vice president with the commissioner here in Forest Meadows for a while. I was against building stage 5 in Forest Meadows the whole time. I went to these meetings and was pleading, don't vote for it because of the flooding. I saw beaver dams where houses sit now, from a lot of y'all's houses sit. I saw beaver dams and ponds we used to ride our four-wheelers on and all that stuff. And I watched that area flood continuously, and it was on a 100-year flood plan. And we told them that. They're like, no, we'll take care of it. The builders said, we'll take care of that. Did they take care of it? No, they didn't take care of anything. They said, it's your job now. And Mayor Johnston said he doesn't have the money to fix it. Sorry. And that's what we've been getting since I lived in Hernando. I've moved here in 1998. I was in Deer Creek, and the developer shortchanged everybody. All the houses, all the subdivisions started collapsing. I mean, we always heard, you know, you're going to get a nice house, you're going to get this subdivision, we're the best, you know. Oh no, I've seen it. I've seen Hernando, you know, subdivisions, they promise you something, and they're like, well, we're done. City's problem. So guys, when you vote, please understand this is the taxpayers' money, your monies, that you're going to be spending that we don't have once we fix these roads. Because right now, we don't have money to fix the roads. And we have a lot of road problems in Hernando, as you all know. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks, guys. Anybody have anything for me?
So would the applicant please come forward and give you a rebuttal?
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. These individuals we met with and invited us in the home, and we worked through a lot of these items. And there is a lot of anxiety that remains about regarding a lot of pre-existing conditions of Short Fork Creek and other items associated with this area of the city. And that's unfortunate that there are these issues at play. I would rather us not be judged by existing drainage considerations or problems in other subdivisions that we really don't have anything to do. While I understand the point the individual is making, that the developer's responsibilities and their shortcomings, I do understand that. But Mr. Stevenson addressed Short Fork Creek better than I can, and he's spot on accurate. MDEQ, the requirements coming down to the EPA are very stringent. And the layers that are placed upon us when we're developing in proximity to blue line streams, waters of the state, what have you, is multi-layered. It goes well beyond us. Our engineering has prepared documents permitting that Mr. Stevenson mentioned. That has to go to city engineer for review. That then has to go to MDEQ for review. And in instances that flood related, it has to go to FEMA for review, for letters of map revisions and other things. So there are a lot of stopgap measures with regard to Short Fork Creek. There are, I want to say, 15 subdivisions currently adjoining Short Fork Creek within the city limits of Hernando today. And much of the issues that we're aware of, or all the issues exist today post improvements that MDEQ made historically, which is why we've provided a 110-foot minimum buffer along Short Fork Creek to allow, to give that act, to do what needs to be done to protect Short Fork Creek. Our engineering will have to rise to meet the requirements of the storm drainage with the state. That is a checks and balance that our engineers will have to adhere to. Short Fork Creek is something that I guess all I want to say, underscore, Billy may have some other items with regard to Short Fork Creek. It is an elephant in the room that will absolutely have to be addressed by a lot of individuals above us. With regard to access, there's a couple things I want to mention about access. I want to read, so we talked about connection of this property and its location on street. This is a copy of your Article 5 subdivision regulations. These are the subdivision regulations that guide our development. There's a provision that I've highlighted. It's number 12, Article 5, number 12, that states, to assure a continuous circulation system in an area when all the land is developed, the Planning Commission may require extension of a street within a subdivision to the adjoining property. Which street would be continued at the time the adjoining property would be developed? Temporary turnarounds, 40-foot radiuses shall be provided at termination of those streets. So the connections at Keenlan Drive and at Singletree are a direct requirement of the subdivision regulations. Just like when they developed their property, they stubbed to this property. We have stubs that are ongoing to the west. That's a direct requirement of the city's code. And there are other provisions with regard to that. Commissioner Thorne, at our last meeting, you mentioned perhaps going to Thousand Oaks as an alternative path. That was something we looked at. I haven't had a chance to speak. I don't know if you've spoken with the city. We contacted the landowner, Mr. Bridgeforth, and we have a letter. Austin was provided, and he denied the sale of that land to connect to Thousand Oaks. I'm happy to share it with you. I have a copy here for you. I'll put it on the record. So we have attempted to do that, to address that consideration that you provided to us. Unfortunately, we don't control that property. There have been some statements made. It's clearly misunderstanding of density and items, and at no point have I misled or misrepresented this project. I say again, these people welcomed me into their home, and I thought we had a great conversation. It was a meaningful conversation. Density is what density is, and we're well below the threshold of the surrounding community. So we do fit in 100% with the community. I don't know, I want to let Billy address some of the items he had. I'm just kind of flying off the cuff, but I may think of some other things in a moment, but let Billy step in and fill in some blanks for me.
Well, the main thing I want to emphasize to this commission and to the objectors that live in the neighborhoods around there is that the preservation of the trees is going to be a legal requirement that the owner of that property has to adhere to, and there are measures that can be taken to prevent somebody violating that restriction, okay? And those are legally enforceable, and these lots are not going to be legally able to be further subdivided. So the number of lots that are proposed will be the maximum number of lots that can be developed on this.
How are you going to enforce that?
Well, through legal means, either deed restrictions or, as Cory stated, on the plat itself. So if the property changes hands away from this developer, that provision remains and is legal.
But they could come back to the planning commission or alderman and request a plat change at that time. I mean, we see, I'm sure you see, and Mr. Brady sees, subdivision plat change, we see it all the time. Like a request to rezone or replat a subdivision, divide lots from one lot to two lots or whatever it is.
May I address a question to the developer?
You have to address the commission, but let's let them finish.
As Billy mentioned, there's ways for us to do it. You're absolutely correct. Those 7 lots, if somebody wanted to come in and try to plat it to subdivide it, they'd have to come back before this body, number one.
Right.
And the record would show that it was clearly intended as a product of rezoning to limit those lots to as shown on that plat. It's a condition of the zoning. Otherwise, deed restrictions, there's attorneys in this room, if that were what it required, it's awfully difficult to overcome a deed restriction on the property. Our intent for the development, just to be clear, those single-family 7 state lots, is for one individual single-family home to be placed on those lots in the manner in which they can have their home, their accessory, and their driveway. That's the limitation. And I know that might sound difficult in practicality, but these are developments that we've created. We've discussed them about developments in Lakeland that are estate developments that meet that criteria. So it's not anything at all that be concerned, because at the end of the day, worst case, somebody has to come back before this body, that committee, to rezone or to re-subdivide that property.
It just leaves us without a leg to stand on if the board and alderman votes to rezone the rest of the property R15, and they say, hey, all these houses around us are R15, we want R15. Whereas you're requesting R15 and nothing around you is R15 that you're connecting to. If somebody was, if the property ever changed hands, who knows, we can't control the economy and economics and stuff. If it comes back to the board, it's like, hey, these 50 other lots are R15, why can't we be R15?
Just the legal documentation is what would be in place.
It just,
That's just not something that's realistic, frankly. I mean, it's just not legally permissible. mean, they can laugh if they want, but that's just speculation on something that's just not gonna happen because of the way the law is written. And what we're proposing to you prevents that very thing. We're trying to preserve the trees to accommodate a lot of reasons, but the citizens in the neighborhood want for one.
I mean, if we're
So he's doing
preserving,
exactly
if
what's
we're
been asked.
preserving the trees, it could be a park, or it could be a common open space where it doesn't get developed. Not an estate lot where the owner has
Same
control.
thing.
And a HOA, you know, I've been a part of HOAs, and we all know HOAs have no power, they have no money. Like, all they can do is place a lien on your property, and then when the house conveys or sells, they have to pay that.
We're not talking about an HOA having the authority to enforce something. This is gonna be legally enforceable by anyone.
But we don't have that,
City,
we don't have
or
that,
neighbors,
we don't have that in
or
front of us
HOA.
tonight to look at. We don't have a legal document that you're saying this tree preservation is in front of us tonight.
That's the representation we're making to you that
I know, but we don't have that document to look at, to review. Correct? We're just talking in the future.
To, somewhat to that point, I mean, the property in the current zoning, to any zoning, I mean, if it were left in place, someone can come and file zoning in 5 years to develop it as AR, R20,
Right.
R30 as well. And this board would have.
Well, they wouldn't have to, I mean, it's already
No, I'm
approved, so
saying
that,
if this case, side of this case, there's, the developer has, your property owner could come in and rezone the property. Hypotheticals are all over the place and develop the properties R30s if they want and not have any of these stipulations upon them. This represents an option where we're trying to work to create as lowest of impact of development that meets the criteria of the development code and still make it preserves the trees and the topography that the neighbors have clearly put a lot of value on, and we're trying to appease them. Under the current regulations, that property can be developed as A. It can be cleared. It can be, cows can be put on it. That is something that, it's not something you've heard us talk about, but that's a fact. It can
Absolutely.
be cleared tomorrow. We don't want that to happen. The plan that we're proposing is our belief the best way to preserve those hills, correct the drainage from Mr. Lake just mentioned, or not exacerbate that drainage issues, and develop the property in a usable, financially responsible way is what we're trying to do. And we can stand here at the podium and make claims, statements, what have you. Billy can write up the legal documents that will guarantee, that provide the guarantees that you're concerned about as a committee. It's our intent, what you're suggesting.
What we're saying is if it's developed under any other method other than this plan in R15 as your general development plan suggests it should be, it could be 2 to 3 units to the acre, and you wouldn't have the preservation that we're proposing to have. We want this to be, the trees to be preserved, as the neighbors do. But without this rezoning, that's probably not possible.
like I said, you guys keep mentioning the R15, R12, R20 general development plan is what it calls for low density.
It does.
But also in our ordinances, R30 and R40 is also described as low density.
The
That's right.
general development plan makes specific recommendations on density and bookends what so back up one step. When a comprehensive plan, general development is drafted, ordinances are written based on that comprehensive plan. So your ordinance was drafted based on that general development plan. Subdivision regs were various things. It's not just the development of property, but your actual ordinance is based on that plan that we're.
But our ordinance, as it reads in this book right here, as I'm reading, it also defines low density, as you described, for this project to be. Also, you mentioned R12, R15, R20, but it also defines R30 and R40 as low density.
But the general development plan specifically lists the zoning ordinance districts, the zoning districts as R12, R15, R20 for this property. It does not recommend R30, R40. The recommendation of the general development plan
Is low density.
No, is a zoning district of R12, R15, or R20, which is your zoning, low-density zoning districts that are appropriate for this property. That's what the development plan says.
Just the ordinances describe R30 and R40 also as low density.
And in other parts of the development plan, it recommends those lot sizes. In this particular portion of property, it does not recommend those lot sizes. It recommends R12, R15s, and R20s. There's a clear delineation on where the R40s are supposed to go based on the development plan that was drafted. This one does not recommend R30 or R40,
So
or ag or AR. And that's based on financial considerations, public improvements for sewers and infrastructure extension, all sorts of things. There's a lot taken into play.
So on the one of the homeowners provided this drawing, which I'm sure you've seen, with the 2 retention ponds on the property, but this plat doesn't show any retention pond.
So right now, it's a preliminary
provided
plat. The
those.
detention ponds and all that analysis, all of the modeling and everything is done with the construction drawing, at the construction drawing time. And what we are saying is, this is our preliminary plat. At no time will there be more than 55 lots on this development should you approve this rezoning. We have to engineer that property. If our detention requirements are more substantial than what our preliminary quantities and estimates say, we lose lots because we have to. The state will require us to detain. So while we're saying 55, it's a maximum 55. If our detention needs growth, we don't have anywhere else to put it other than where lots are.
I just didn't know where these retention ponds come from versus.
They are shown because there are low areas where naturally flows naturally go to, where we would capture. It's a detention system, not a retention system. And we would capture, store the water for the storm event based on the city's requirements, ordinances, and then release it at that rate. So they're just 2 low areas where the discharge would naturally happen.
I do have a question on the single tree entrance.
Yes, sir.
So what would be the width of that road going into that property?
So the minimum width of a local road, if that's it, is 50-foot right of way.
But
And then it's a curb and gutter is a 31-foot back of curb, 30-foot face of curb, face of curb.
So would the city be required to bring up the rest of that single tree entrance to 50 foot? Because it's not.
Public road that's already been accepted by the city. When it's accepted as a public road, it meets the city's criteria as a public road. So we're simply tying into an existing public road system that's already.
But I think your road would be wider than the existing road.
Not necessarily. I don't know exactly what their pavement width is, but we have curb and gutter. So if their asphalt width, let's say, is 26 feet, we'll take that 26 feet and add 2 feet on either side for curb and gutter. So that's the difference. The asphalt pavement cross-section is the same. They would have a rural, the side of the road. My brain's going.
But if that road had to be widened, it would be upon the city to do that, correct?
I can't understand an environment where the road would have to be widened to accommodate this. Again, the subdivision regulations require the size of that street that was constructed.
But that was in, what, 70s or 80s?
But it was still a standard, and that standard.
Hasn't changed any?
Austin could speak more to it, having been administrator at DeSoto County and here, but y'all's street sections are the same street sections as DeSoto County's, as far as I know, for a local 50-foot right-of-way.
Yeah, 24-foot open ditch, 30-foot face.
24. So 24 foot of pavement section. On us, if we have curb and gutter, we'll have additional gutter width beyond that per.
And I haven't measured the property myself, but I drove by the property and walked the property, and it looks like a very narrow street on that section right there.
Yeah. If it's probably, I would suspect 20, they're saying 21, and I wholly trust that was measured out there, and perhaps it was, but when it was constructed, it would have needed to meet that criteria, so maybe the asphalt overlays have gotten narrow over time.
Right.
But if it's a public street, it's supposed to be a 50-foot right-of-way.
Right.
That's what it's supposed to be, and we're not anticipating anything that would change that to a higher classification of street, which would thereby require the widening of that street.
I have a couple of questions, one for y'all and one for Austin. Austin, what Commissioner Max was talking about as far as like R30 and R40, and what they're talking about is R12, R15, R20, is this what you were referring to on the first page of our packet? That is the recommendation for that area is 12, 15, and 20?
They do provide appropriate zoning classifications, R12, R15, R20, and low density development is, so that's the maximum density that would be provided for. So R12, R15, R20, anything less dense than that would still be appropriate. This Comprehensive plan is designed for maximum density recommendations.
Right. Yeah.
You've got that.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to clarify on that. And so my question for you is this, because I know this keeps coming up from people in the surrounding area, and leaving it agricultural and doing like 1 acre lots. So you've shown us what it looks like as far as all of the changes that you've made to try and preserve the topography of the land and to plan for the runoff and all of that. If you went in and you left it agricultural, and you said, okay, we're going to go to, and I know this may be a tough question, but you're going to go in, you're going to do 1 acre lots. I'm going to assume it's not going to be contained with this. That probably, that tree preservation does that go away if you go to?
It would have to.
And I do not mean that threatening.
No. I'm asking because I want to get a good view of what, if you go with a 1 acre lot, what does that actually look like? Is it basically, then you're looking at removing everything to maximize the use of that land, and then, what does that look like?
Well, first of all, so you would go in and establish a street network and develop 1 to 1.5 acre lots, right? At the surface, that's the lowest and worst use for the property because there's sewer immediately on site. So from a financial standpoint, it does not benefit the city because the 1 acre lots don't pay for the taxes they pay for the property that's in front of the development. That's not what you're specifically asking, though. When we would develop the property, there would be nothing to preclude the developer from establishing 1 acre lots and entirely clearing the property. He has that right today to go out and clear the property, cut a road in, a minor road, 50 foot like we described, and plat out 1 acre lots. He has the right today to take that hill down in doing so. There is nothing, that would be 100% entitled and within his rights today to do.
Right. So how would, if it were done that way, how would that impact the water issues?
We would.
It'd be terrible.
The very concerns that they had, so when we had the previous plan that had more lots, 80 lots, we were engineering everything to pick up the water and push it back to the north towards Short Fork Creek. There's a creek that runs up through the south, through Thousand Oaks, that goes into a pond, and then that exit flow, I think somewhere in there, is some problems, and then there were some other drainage issues associated with Forest Meadows. We were proposing to fix all of that drainage with the prior subdivision, but by staying out of that, it's the pre-existing condition remains because the topography is unchanged. The ridge is here, and the only way to fix it is to take that ridge down, which would destroy all the trees. So by removing it and saving and preserving the topography and preserving all those trees, that drainage condition remains as it is today. If we were going to go cut in 1 acre lots, we would take that hill out and we'd reconfigure all of the drainage and all of that. But taking out the hill, the trees, all of that would go away. The common open space would go away. The buffers, none of that stuff would be required. A 1 acre lot could have direct connection to that Short Fork Creek by law. It could be on the rear of your lot.
There wouldn't be a setback on that. You would just run it.
You'd have
straight up.
setback, but the lot line would go all the way to the boundary. And as the gentleman stated, Short Fork Creek does this, where our boundary does this, and those lot lines would just extend. Right now, we're staying, it says 110 foot off, but it's actually about 120 something average. There's 135, 110. And we're completely staying off of it. The property line is there, so a fence stops there. The rest of it's common open space. Intended to protect, which is another consideration in the ordinance, to protect stream areas and whatnot. And there's flood area associated with the stream that was shown on that illustration. We're not touching that. It's not impacting the flood capacity of that.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question.
You did, because I know that was one, I just wanted to know what your thought was, because I know the topic is coming up, okay, just leave it the way it is and develop it as 1 acre, and that gives us a really good idea of what that would, I just want to know what in your mind that would look like.
It would be a grid system, 1 acre lot subdivision, not unlike Thousand Oaks in the plot geometry of what it is. But again, the topography and the trees would be removed, just like it was if you do historical areas across that area. Forest Meadows was heavily wooded, a heavily contoured area. It was engineered. So was Thousand Oaks. It's just historically the way that area was.
You'd still have to comply with any MDEQ requirements, though.
Absolutely, with regard to the creek, but, I mean, that's, again, we have to, anytime, it's water of the state. It's not your water, it's not our water, we have to comply.
But you're saying 1 acre lots, all that would be, they would lose the trees, but the drainage issues would be
We wouldn't have
fixed.
detention requirements necessarily the same, just like Milam Country and Township don't have detention. None of those things are in place to really improve it.
And that's, I think, my concern at this point, and hearing Ms. Stewart talk and Mr. Lake, or Kelvin, in any event, the water runoff from that creek and what we're looking at. I mean, you've had, of course, y'all got Mr. Smith involved, but y'all have looked at these detention ponds are gonna decrease? Am I understanding that that's what the basis of and the expectation that the water flow is gonna decrease is due to the detention ponds?
So the root of it all is pre-development condition, post-development condition. So you go out there and you calculate your runoff by your watersheds, and that's your pre-drainage condition, how much water is entering Short Fork at known points. Your post-drainage condition or post-development condition has to improve that, has to meet or exceed that requirement. And actually MDEQ, to John's point, is making it more extensive than that. But at the root of it, your post-development, post-improvement, the runoff from your property can exceed the pre-development condition. Does that make sense? So if you raw land out there today, you have a farm and water's running off into that creek, there's, say, 20 acres of water running into that creek at that point. Post-development condition, you develop that soybean farm. At that point, you cannot discharge any more than was.
Which is where the basis that it has to improve the situation.
Yes, it has to improve the situation, and it's storing it at a capacity of a storm frequency. So
That's what the pond's for.
So you're basically holding that water back to allow water to disseminate and disperse, and then releasing it at the pre-development flow. It's engineering.
Basically the same thing a lake and dam does.
A dam's holding that water back, and you have a release flowing out of there, and a lot of times it's the same as the creek, that with the natural flows of the creek is what it.
And y'all evaluated this with the downflow to the neighborhood, her neighborhood, his neighborhood, like that, as to how it's gonna impact them.
So.
I mean, has that been evaluated? I mean, because that's where it affects, is downstream.
So two things to answer your question, George. So that creek is changing, ever-changing. Gentleman is absolutely correct. MDEQ, number one, it's their jurisdiction. They need to fix. Not the city of Hernando. If that creek's messing up, it's MDEQ's, and they need to be aware of it, which is what we told these individuals. But yes, we have looked at it. How can we engineer this property to not exacerbate that issue? Because we are actually downstream from Notting Hill. The water's flowing this way. We are on the downstream or downhill side of Milam Country, so we're not imposing any water on Milam Country. And there are I don't mean to put you on the spot. There are a handful of discharge points along Short Fork Creek where this property drains into, and those discharge points is where detention ponds will be dispersed to make our post-development flows match the pre-development flows.
So you're saying
Yes, we've analyzed it to that degree. Now, we take it one step later, confirm all the permit documents that Mr. Stevenson alluded to with the construction.
And I understand MDEQ still has to.
Absolutely.
Give their approval to it.
Yeah, and I'm dealing with this right now on two developments that we're doing, and it is absolutely getting tight. And they are Johnny on the spot about it. I'm very sorry that there are pre-existing issues around Hernando, but that does not, we have no control of that. We can't do that. All we can do is engineer our project and MDEQ. We can't just go out in Wild West like developments were done in the 80s and 90s.
So you said there's a construction entrance going to Mackinville.
Yes, sir.
That's that driveway of that house, it looks like, on the last plan, right?
We have a contract access through there.
Be some improvements.
So I guess there'll be a bond for that sidewalk to be damaged or repaired?
Which driveway are you talking about?
On Mackinville.
It's private property that we've contracted with to provide.
But that new ADA compliant sidewalk down Mackinville goes right across there. That, I mean, it's bound to get damaged.
Bond for the road connections and all that stuff, yes. All the public improvements or disturbances.
Like across from Compel, Kevin, is where.
Yeah, I see it. My turn.
Yes, sir.
First off, I want to thank you both for just being patient and going back through all this last couple of times, and
Likewise.
and the effort that you've taken to meet with all the residents in the surrounding neighborhoods. And I want to stay away from the word speculation because, Commissioner Max talking about the tree preservation, it's speculation on what that may or may not be. Suggests that you're speculating that you're going to fix all this water to everybody in this room. So that's a speculation as well. And historically, if you've lived in Hernando a long time, I've been here 20 some odd years, and some of you have been here your whole life. The city of Hernando has not solved the flooding problem in every neighborhood in this town. And every time we build a new subdivision, there's always the same concerns, and there's always the same engineering plans. 5 years later, there's a new flooding problem in that same subdivision. So I can, in my own neighborhood, as many as we can all relate to, it's a concern, and I can relate to everybody in this room that, there's, based on these photos and the videos that we saw, it goes back to one of my original comments. Just because we have a piece of land doesn't mean we need to put a house on it. I mean, we could make this a conservatory and save the bats or something, right? I mean, that's just my concern, that we're working overtime to get houses on this piece of property. And you drop this thing by 30% just to get a subdivision in there. That all being said, I understand the process, and we have a long way to go before dirt starts moving. But I want to go back to the road thing. Thank you for double checking with that coming off of Thousand Oaks. Could you help me, where does the construction road come off of Mackingvale on this map here?
North or south, I guess, of the pond?
North of the pond, there's the existing St. James.
It's going to come up here,
Right there.
and it's going to tie into here, I guess?
Yes, sir.
Is it Ms. Milam's old house?
Oh, come on.
Milam's driveway.
Okay.
I can show you on the screen for the benefit of everybody. And that, we've got a signed agreement that,
Okay.
on file.
Just thinking, if there's, why couldn't that construction road then be turned into an access point? Because it goes back to single-family low-density residential development should be located on a collector or major arterial road. Single Creek and Keenan are neither of those
But
roads.
the subdivision is. The subdivision fronts Mackingvale. It's the physical subdivision of property.
Because of
This is-
the edge of that
It's
property?
the development of the property, it's subdivision of that property. We're fronting on actual Mackingvale. But I
That's a
mean, to your
loophole.
point, the subdivision illustrated is a part. I'm talking about the general subdivision of
all the way
land
over to
of this
here.
property. There's any property that fronts on Mackingvale, Danny James is retaining for future phases.
So
of
this
development.
satisfies the requirement that this subdivision is connected to that because the property line is touching that road?
What I am suggesting, it's number two things, again, the connectivity points are prescribed to us by the subdivision regulation, pre-existing condition, we have to tie into that. Let's set that aside, because that's not what you're asking.
Right.
The construction access is what Danny James, through very long negotiation, would agree to do on that for the period of construction for the development. What I'm suggesting is the property, the division of property is by default a subdivision of property, and this subdivision division of properties fronts on Mackingvale Road.
Which is a,
Is an arterial. That's what I'm saying. There's been a lot of situations here, and I've done my best to try to explain this situation, the various aspects of things that perhaps many individuals just don't understand, and that's a failure on my part to explain it.
well, it's education, right? It just takes time and education, but,
Combined.
the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
But,
So if I'm gonna live in this subdivision, I need to get to Mackingvale, I'm gonna cut through Milam,
which is a public road.
or I'm gonna
which is
cut
like-
back through Keenan. And I think that's the concern, when you add 55 houses, at least 1.5, let's say, even, or 2 cars. That's 110 vehicles per day, and we know the traffic on the schools, so we have to think of all of that residual traffic that gets built up, just when you put a low density. So that's a concern, right? How do we solve those problems? And if there's already a construction road, could that road not be converted to a public road after development? If it's already there,
It belongs to somebody else, though.
But it's on the same subdivision property.
The
You
answer
own
is
the
yes,
property.
it could be long-term, but not with this phase of construction. Just like Forest Meadows phased in sequence, this is phasing in sequence. So that, there very well could be in the future a separate connection to Mackingville. But with this phase of development, there's not. But what we are doing is adhering to the subdivision regulations that require us to connect to public roads.
Sure.
And there's no, beyond that, there's no requirement. The property meets the criteria of the development plan, and our infrastructure meets the criteria of the subdivision regulations.
And that's our job, to make sure that all the minimum requirements are met.
Yes, sir.
But that doesn't mean that we can't exceed those requirements. So the exceeding of that is to satisfy the concern about what's going on in that surrounding neighborhood. If there's already a construction road coming off of Mackingville, is it a consideration to convert that at the end of development to a public road? It's already going to be a gravel road or whatever's there. There's only going to be a base there.
I think it's a driveway right now for a house.
Yeah.
That would take an agreement from that land.
Or cut back up through the woods and connect right to that stub out that you've got planned.
Go ahead, Bill.
It requires negotiation with the landowner. We don't own that property. We don't have access.
To Danny James'
other than
property.
by contract to use it as a construction access at this point in time.
It's a consideration, something to think about.
It has been, it is, and it has been throughout the process. I mean, I think that's one thing I hope the board can see is we have been the bending and moving and doing everything we can
Yes, you have.
here. I mean,
I know you have.
to a great extent. And we're still talking about Short Fork Creek. That is an item that we addressed last time that we know we have to go through variations on. And instead of playing shift and trade and all that stuff, we went to the neighbors and said, here's a plan, this is what we can do, guys. We heard you. We respect you, we heard you. And that's what this plan is, 55 lots versus 80. Almost 50% of the site remains. I mean, that's significant.
That's a big sacrifice, sure.
So, you know, and in doing so, again, we're doing it in a manner that complies with the zoning ordinance, the comp plan, the subdivision regulations, international fire code, MDEQ requirements. Every permit that they put up there, we have to do anyway. All that we have to do. That's not a stipulation that we're gonna say, no, we're not doing that. We were already doing that. It's 100% requirement, it's a 404 permit.
Keep in mind that the request is, the application is for positive recommendation to the board for rezoning only, but conditioned on us doing what we are telling you tonight that we're gonna do. That's it.
I guess if we do that, though, does it revert back to A, or does it stay R15?
I would say it would be A. It would not be rezoned
If
if we
the
violated
rezoning
our
wouldn't occur.
agreement.
Until the plan is executed.
Yeah, that's right. So there's, and, you know, in conclusion, you know, look at the evidence. The evidence necessary for you to grant a rezoning request is contained in your general development plan. It's there. That's why that general development plan recommends R 12, 15, and 20, because the evidence supports that this is the way this property, this particular property should be developed. And they're correct. The things that have occurred that were projected in this general development plan are accurate. They were correct. Now, the material change in the character of the neighborhood relates back to when this property was zoned agricultural. When this property was zoned agricultural, the subdivision surrounding this property didn't exist. They've developed over time. That is the change in the character of the neighborhood. It's become urban. It's become residential. It's not agricultural anymore. It may still be zoned agricultural, but that's not the use of that property. So clearly a public need for residential uses in Hernando with the people that are moving here, because it's a great place to live. So what we represent to you tonight is that we have met our burden of proof under state law. We've addressed the 3 criteria in the Hernando zoning ordinance that show conclusively that we've complied with the general development plan. This developer has gone out of his way to try to meet the concerns of the neighbors, preserving the trees, truly preserving the trees, reducing the number of lots to comply density-wise with the area, so that there are not more houses per acre in this development than exist in the surrounding area as a whole. So we respectfully request that this board take into consideration all the true evidence, the efforts of the developer, and make a positive recommendation to the Board of Aldermen for rezoning of this property from agricultural to R15, conditioned upon this preliminary plan that we presented to you tonight. Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to approve, deny, or table this item?
I make a motion to deny rezoning request by Cory Brady, representing the owner of the property, for 49 acres from A to R15. Subject properties identified as parcel 307, 308, 00, 00, 000, 202, and is located in the west side of Keenlan Drive, south of Milam Lane, Section 8, Township 3, Range 7, based upon 1 through 3.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Thorne,
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan,
Nay.
Commissioner Safley,
Nay.
Commissioner Max,
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth,
No.
Motion to deny this item failed.
Okay, 3-2.
So do we have another motion?
Here's what I'd like to know. Can we condition any approval on the MDE, also upon MDEQ approval?
Jesse and I was talking,
Satisfic-
so we're already, I think, getting very much in the gray area of a strict zoning of the legal criteria by accepting their voluntary condition of the plat. The DEQ, because zoning is changing the law, it's changing the land use of that piece of property. And I know the word speculative has been run around a lot, but the plat is something we could concrete look at and say when it comes back for preliminary, it does or does not meet. There are lots of processes that kind of go in the queue, because the zoning is one, the preliminary plat is another, the submittal of construction plans is later. And I do understand how this thing evolved. You know, I think there was a straight zoning request, and most everyone in the room wanted some more assurances of what was gonna go on that property. And the more conditions we add, the more uncertainty, honestly, we have for the underlying land use of what that R15 means. It's not PUD, it's an R15. And so the plat is something is concrete that the applicant's proposing as a voluntary condition, but that's already, I believe, tight, something we can catch. So that's what Jesse and I were talking about is, you know, if a lot changes, is that enough to revert a zoning? Does that trigger another zoning action? So the developer's providing lots of assurances of what's to come, and the plat being one of those things, but I think DEQ would be kind of further along from that.
And that's my concern, I guess, because of if we're changing this, I like the idea of reverting back to A if we don't like the plat, how it comes out. I like the idea of what Billy had told me a little while ago.
I just don't know if it automatically do that. I think it would take Board of Aldermen the ones that can revert zoning, and even in a PUD, because I know in 2 years of inactivity, if a PUD is approved, there is language where the board may consider reverting it back. The automatic is so tough because, you know, that could be considered a taking. You know, there's financial obligations involved with land use changes, and there's lots of things, once that decision's made, that gets set into motion.
Yeah, that's why this would be simpler if it was a PUD, frankly.
But the voluntary condition of the plat is something they're offering as a voluntary condition. It's not something the city is really in, but they're conditioning that their approvals can be conditional on that.
But we don't have anything other than this plat about the tree preservation.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't describe anything in the details.
All right, is there another motion?
So if I do make the motion to approve it, I can make it conditioned on the plat, as the plat's laid out, but not, on condition of a subsequent approval for plat consistent with the one presented today. Is that how we should say it?
It would, again, with anything, I would need to get a more definite statement on it. Again, conditioning.
All right, well, it's their voluntary condition.
As long as you have to
It's
say
their
that they
voluntary condition,
voluntarily,
yes.
At this point, from what Austin and I have discussed.
And Cory, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, this is, y'all's voluntary, y'all are voluntarily conditioning this, and I think y'all are voluntarily, I mean, I think you're acknowledging that you have to comply with the DEQ requirements.
100%.
That I was, and that frankly is, I think, the biggest sticking point, at least for me.
To be clear, we cannot develop this property without DEQ.
All right.
Again, to be, just to be fully clear, at this point, what we do, the city, what we talked about, again, more definite statement, you can't make it contingent, you can't, as a city, can't make it
Of course.
contingent upon
I see.
not selling to someone who's not bound by those provisions. Does that make sense? So we don't, at this point, don't think that would be legally binding upon the
If the
next
property
owner.
were to sell, okay.
So if it was approved for a rezoning, the developer didn't develop it, they could sell it as R-15 and it'd all be developed as R-15, is what your legal opinion is.
Again, to get a more definite statement about what you're saying, you aren't imposing that condition.
No,
That's the difference I
no,
think at
right.
this point.
But if the property conveys to somebody else, it's not bound by this plat
I would need to.
legally.
I would need to look more specifically
Not
at that
under
issue.
rezoning, I think you're right. I mean, just-
Right.
Mr. Chairman, can I address one thing briefly? All I want to suggest is if the holdup is that matter, and we need to convert this to a planned unit development to appease the commissioners, to give you some satisfaction in that regard, I can do that. In our side of the field, a PUD is not necessary because we have one use and all this other planning jargon. But if it's what this committee, this body wants to see, if that gives you some level of assurances, and then I can make some stipulations that are PD conditions that are recorded with the plat, I can do that. It's no different than what we're already doing, other than a lot of more paperwork.
So your recommendation going forward would be recommending A to PD as the doing Akron's proposal?
I guess whatever that takes, I don't know the legal draw. I just hear you, Commissioner Jordan, saying your concerns. I hear you, Commissioner Max, hearing your concerns. And if PD in that if that changes those concerns and satisfies the attorneys in the room, only me can do that. That's what I'm.
Would we approve it tonight or table it? Approve it and then it has to be done by the board meeting, or what? How does that work?
Yours is a recommendation anyway, so your recommendation going forward is.
Okay, recommend it as a PUD.
Yeah, just a
Consistent with the conditions that were presented and set forth at the presentation.
Yeah, at this point, your recommendation could be that going forward, and the application would change.
Okay.
So they would have to redo everything as a PUD for the alderman.
Theoretically, we have that in essence in pieces. The PD going forward would be the plat that we talked about in depth tonight. But, yeah, it would change that going forward. But, theoretically, I guess the big decision maker is, does that address the concerns of the commission? Does that plat? That's the big question.
I mean, as long as it's a subsequent DEQ approval that it's going to reduce or not increase any stormwater or cause any issues downstream, I mean, that's gonna be the big issue, I think.
My biggest concern is the tree preservation and then the R-15 development. These lots, like I say, if it's conveyed or sold to a different developer, we all see developers change hands, things happen, economics and everything else. and then somebody else comes in, because this piece of property is zoned R15, and everything gets flattened in R15. Because then your density changes and everything else, your water and everything else is not what you proposed.
But a plat would go with a PUD.
Yes.
Yes.
It would also serve as the preliminary plat at the same time.
And you have to abide by that PUD. That's why
right.
PUD,
A PUD to me makes more sense.
Yeah,
I would be more comfortable as a PUD.
absolutely.
Because we could put more recommendations around a PUD than we can with this.
Yes.
And that's my concern, that's why I'm not really for this one, because of where it sits right now.
Right.
Because like I said, the legal opinion is if it's conveyed or sold, then this plat means nothing.
All right, do we have another motion?
But do we table it and then see the PUD and approve it and recommend it to the board, or how does that work? Because we don't have the PUD in front of us.
Well, I think that, I think, I would propose if we're going to approve it, conditioned upon the presentation of a PUD consistent with the plat as presented here tonight.
So,
And the requirement, and
so it's gonna be a motion to approve from A to a PUD? Because it wouldn't be an R15
yeah,
approval.
that'd be correct. Consistent with the plat as
It
presented.
depends on their submittal, if they're willing to do this submittal.
This is what I'm willing to do to solve this problem and help you guys. By the mayor and board meeting, I can prepare a plat document that has the preliminary plat illustration on it, and I can provide a sheet that has the PD conditions on it. That will outline uses permitted, bulk regulations, all the things you guys are used to seeing in setback, in PD text. I can describe the intention of area of whatever we call it, the estate lots, the preservation of trees, preservation of topography. So now you have some regulatory componentry there at the city level of how that shakes out.
So the
And no-
request will go from a A to a PUD?
if that's the wish of this board, if that eliminates a lot of you guys' concerns from our chair, we're still doing the exact same thing, which is why I'm 100% on board with eliminating y'all's concerns. It's just putting it in a document and getting it there.
It locks it in.
Yeah, I agree with Billy. We're locked in anyway, but to the point that you guys are happy, the city's happy, we'll lock it in with a PD, is what I'm saying. We do a lot of plan developments, so nothing about it scares me one iota. It's just given, what I'm hearing Commissioner Max and Commissioner Jordan say, it eliminates those because there's PD conditions in there that state, MDEQ approval, storm drainage, limitations on the preservation lights, which I hope will further satisfy these guys, because that's our intent to do anyway. So forgive me for taking up more time. But yes.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve of a rezoning request by Cory Brady representing the owner of the property for 49 acres from A to a planned unit development consistent with the plat as presented in the preliminary subdivision plan for Crestview Point subdivision at the meeting tonight. The subject property is identified as parcel 3073080000000202 and is located on the west side of Keenlan Drive, south of Milam Lane, in Section 8, Township 3, Range 7, based upon the findings in 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3.
Are there any specific items you want to include?
Well, that the plan unit development be consistent with the tree and topography preservation, that the common open space, the space between the lots, the buffers that are set forth by Mr. Brady tonight, as he's described in his presentation, as well as the common open space that is set forth in the preliminary subdivision plan that has been provided to us and presented as a part of the packet, and the density stays consistent. Retention ponds, however it may be, and I think a final determination has to be determined by DEQ, but any requirements made, anything required by DEQ obviously has to be complied with.
Got a second?
Second.
Get all that?
I'm still shaking my head.
Sorry.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Safley?
Aye.
Commissioner Max?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Motion to approve this item passes.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah, because they've been sitting here through this whole thing.
So most of that you put in.
Item is for variance, PL 1792 at 2587 Jackson Drive. Request for a fence variance to encroach into the front yard setback. The subject property is located on the south side of Jackson Drive, west side of Honeysuckle Lane, more specifically 2587 Jackson Drive. Hunter Johnston is the owner. Mr. Kadosh, will you please present planning staff report and comments?
Yes, sir. This is PL 1792. The request is for a fence variance at 2587 Jackson Drive, which is a corner lot, and the request is to encroach 1 foot into the setback. The next three applications, I'll read this once for the record, are the legal criteria for a zoning approval or denial, that the special conditions or circumstances exist or peculiar to land structures or buildings involved, and not applicable to other land structures or buildings in the same district. The literal enforcement of the provisions of these standards would deprive the applicant rights commonly enjoyed by other properties within the same district under the terms of this ordinance. The special conditions or circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant, are not based on economic considerations, and granting this variance would not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is otherwise denied by the ordinance to land structures or buildings in the same district. As you can see, this fence is up, but what happened in the course of construction, the fence was extended 1 additional foot off the side of the house, so you're allowed 10, and he went 11. So the street his secondary frontage is on is a stub street. It's not currently developed, and in our opinion, does not create a sightline issue. With this being said, we did include pictures of the fence that as constructed and a picture of the aerials to give you an idea of what is soon to come when the property behind is developed. And I did provide motions to approve, deny, or table in your staff report. I'm available if you got any questions, and Mr. Johnson's here representing the application.
Yeah, I'm not quite following the 11 feet.
So, I could pull it up, but basically, on the side of the house, you're allowed to come out 10 feet.
Oh, that way, okay.
Yep, and
Okay.
in the
I'm
course
with
of
you.
construction,
Not
11
next this way.
constructed, so.
Any question, Mr. Kadosh? Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and address in its entirety? Okay. Anybody for or against this application, come forward and state your name and address. All right, is there a motion to approve, deny, or table this item?
I make a motion to approve the request for a variance to encroach 1 foot into the setback as described in the attached exhibits. The subject property is located on the south side of Jackson, west side of Honeysuckle Lane, more specifically 2587 Jackson Drive, based upon the following A through D.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Safley?
Aye.
Commissioner Max?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Motion to approve this item passes. The next item is PL 1809, 3195, Autumn Wind for fence variance. Request for variance to encroach the front yard setback. The subject property is located on the north side of Jackson Drive, west side of Autumn Wind Drive, more specifically 3195 Autumn Wind Drive in Section 21, Township 3, Range 8. Mr. Kadosh, will you please present the planning staff report and comments?
Yes, sir. This is PL 1809, and the request is similar than the last application for a 3.3-foot encroachment into the side yard setback at 3195 Autumn Wind. It is the same criteria for approval or denial as the last application. And as you can see on the attached rendering, the side of Jackson Drive is proposed to encroach 13.3 feet off the side of the house, which would encroach 3.3 into the outside of the required setback. We did a site inspection. We do not feel it's a site hazard with the surrounding intersection. And we did propose a motion to approve, deny, or table in your staff report.
Any question for Mr. Kadosh? Will the applicant please come forward and state your name and address in its entirety?
My name is Greg Dukes. I live at 3195 Autumn Wind Drive, Hernando. do I need to?
That's up to you. It's
Okay.
up to you.
I've got additional pictures. I'm sure you've already got pictures that show, when you pull up to the stop sign out in front of our house, there's no obstruction to the view of the entire street on Jackson in either direction. So I
Yeah,
feel
just
like-
looking at the aerials, so your front of your house faces Autumn Wind Drive.
Yes.
So the 3.3 foot encroachment goes towards Jackson.
Correct. On the side of that.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying, if I come up to the stop sign in front of your house, you look down Jackson, that doesn't approach the view.
Correct.
Doesn't appear, I mean, the aerial photo.
And if you're coming down Jackson towards Autumn Wind, you're not obstructed seeing a car coming up to that stop
To that
sign in
stop
front of my
sign.
house. So there's no obstruction in any direction because of it.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone in support against this item? Is there a motion to approve, deny, or table this item?
Make a motion to approve the fence variance to encroach 3.3 feet into the setback as described in the attached exhibits. Subject property is located on the north side of Jackson Drive and the west side of Autumn Wind Drive, more specifically 3195 Autumn Wind Drive, Section 21, Township 3, Range 8, based upon the following findings, A, B, C, and D.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Safley?
Aye.
Commissioner Max?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Motion to approve this item passes. The next item is PL 1813, 1116 Dean Road Fence Variance. Request for a variance to encroach the allowable setback for the construction of a fence. The subject property is located on the north side of Dean Road, south side of Nesby Drive. More specifically, Section 26, Township 2, Range 8, Henry Woodruff, the owner of the policy. Mr. Cardoza, present the Planning Commission reports and comments.
Yes, sir. This is PL 1813. The request is another fence variance to encroach into the front yard setback by 2 feet at 1160 Dean Road. The same legal criteria are applicable for this application, and I did pull it up because this one's very kind of difficult to explain. So this is actually a triple frontage lot. And so in these cases, there are houses next to him. And so along Dean Road, along Nesbitt Road, if you are a double frontage lot, theoretically his next door neighbor, you can have a fence to the rear property just like this legally. And so in his case, he's triple frontage. And so his side yard that's considered accessory is Gwen. And so he could come out 10, but in his case, he's requesting 12. And we did do additional study on this one because there's a sidewalk project ongoing. We want to make sure it was outside the limits of the encroachments of the right-of-way, and we did confirm that that's the case. And additionally, the curve of Dean Road with the intersection of Gwen is outside the sight line of where his 2 foot of additional encroachment would come. So we don't feel it's a sight line issue, but for context, it is triple frontage, but the encroachment he's asking for a variance on is the 2 additional feet on that side to Gwen. And so that's the request as he's presented. I did include motions to approve, deny, or table, and Mr. Woodruff is here in case you have any questions.
Any question, Mr. Cardoza? Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and address in its entirety?
Henry Woodruff, 2747 Star Landing Road is where I live. This is another house of mine. My son is going to live there. We had a fence there. We remodeled the whole house. We took the fence down that was there to remodel the house. And I was just putting the fence back, and then they told me that I had to have a permit, so I was going to get a permit, and now I have to get a variance. So the fence is half the size of the one that was on there that I took down. We would like a little privacy there. Like you said, it's on 3 roads right there. And the extra 2 feet would help a lot.
Any question for the applicant?
You sure your name's Henry? It says Paul on your shirt.
Well, it's Henry Paul.
I'm just
My
messing
wife
with
gets me involved with all this mess, with all this.
I'm just
I use
messing
my
with you, sir.
first name, Henry. I wish you wouldn't do that, but you do.
All right, thank you. You good?
Thank you.
Anyone support or against this item, please come forward.
Oh, yeah.
State your name and address.
I'm Eddie Jones, 1485 Gwen Road, and I would like for Paul to keep his footage because of, I live just south of that. We go to that Carroll Dean Road, and from the gin, experience from the parties they have down there, I had to replace my mailbox twice because of the traffic. And I had to call the police out twice. My daughter, I moved out of there, and my daughter's staying there now. And she had problems. When she get ready to go to work at night, when they had these parties there, they parked in right there at the chain link fence. They tore the mailbox down twice. And they get out of the car, they get the garbage, the bottles there. And I done reported to when Roscoe was in office. And he came out and suggested, and I need probably no parking sign on the right side of the street going down Dean Road. Because they park all over there. And Paul yard, if the fence should have stayed where it was because they're gonna be parking all in his yard. And, it's just terrible.
So you're in favor of?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's
I'm
what,
in favor.
yeah.
He need to put the fence out further to the road, cause they're gonna be tearing his yard up. Cause it wasn't for my chain link fence. They tear my mailbox up already. They tore it up twice. And it wasn't for the security camera. I caught the guy that did that and had him to replace my mailbox. And that's terrible. And I've been there 50 years plus. And got inherited that probably from my aunt. And it's just, something where my daughter lives now. I could deal with the traffic, so I had to move out to my other place. It's just too much mess going on there. Too much. And and the police came out and said that, well, you need kids to get people to put out the trash, but you in the bed asleep. She called me one night at 11 o'clock. I got to get up and come over there and try to assist her because it's my house and try to get the people to move the trash. And you know how they act. They just crazy as whatever. And I can't stand that. Appreciate it.
Anyone else in support or against this item? Is there a motion to approve, deny, or table this item?
I'll make a motion to approve a fence variance to encroach 2 feet into the setback as described in the attached exhibits and is located on the north side of Dean Road and south side of Nesbitt Drive, more specifically 1160 Dean Road in Section 26, Township 2, Range 8, as per A, B, C, and D, the findings set forth therein.
That's it.
Second.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Safley?
Aye.
Commissioner Knox?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
The motion to approve this item passes. The next item on the agenda has been removed, the conditional use, so the next one is the subdivision, PL 1808, Perry Commercial, final plat. Request a final plat approval of one lot on 1.3 acres. The subject property is located on the west side of Highway 51, north of Oak Grove Road in Section 13, Township 3, Range 8, R&H Engineering. Mr. Cardozo, you present the staff plan and report and comments.
Yes, sir. This appeal at 1808, the request is for final plat approval of one lot of 1.3 acres on Highway 51, excuse me, west side of Highway 51, north of Oak Grove in Section 13, Township 3, Range 8. The existing zoning is C2, and the bulk requirements are reflected in your staff report. This is a proposed plat to create a shopping center on Highway 51. All improvements to the property are subject to MDOT, and so the applicant's proposing to tie these improvements with the building permit on the property. So the sidewalk, curb and gutter widths are dictated by MDOT, so he's asked for that improvement to go along with the building permit on the site. I did include 9 standard conditions for the plat, which are typical for commercial development. And this recommendation will be heard by the Board of Aldermen on the May 21st meeting. Andy Richardson's here tonight representing the application, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Cardoza? Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and address in its entirety?
Andy Richardson with R&H Engineering, 231 West Center Street. I'll be happy to answer any questions y'all may have. This is the property between the tattoo parlor and the new body shop on 51, on the west side of 51.
And this is where, that traffic circle's going in there, and Primo's, I think, is wanting to move.
It's further north.
Yeah, this
I
is a
know,
little
but-
bit north, yeah. Not
It's the
very
empty
far.
lot north of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the empty lot north of that. Okay.
I thought you were gonna say Chick-fil-A.
No,
You don't have to write that down.
Any question for the applicant? Thank you. Anyone in support or against this item? Is there a motion to approve, deny, or table this item?
I make a motion to grant final plat approval to Perry Commercial Subdivision, 1 lot, 1.13 total acres located on the west side of Highway 51, north of Oak Grove in Section 13, Township 3, Range 8, based upon a finding that submitted the plat generally conforms to the requirements of the city codes and ordinances, subject to the following conditions 1 through 9.
Is there a second?
second.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Safley?
Aye.
Commissioner Mack?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Motion to approve this item passes.
Are there sidewalks adjoining that? Okay, there are, okay, on both.
North of there.
Well, the sidewalk's on the other side of the street,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
not that side.
There's, yeah, it's in front of the new body shop. They
Oh,
do-
yes, from the new body shop,
Yes,
right,
sir.
right.
Okay.
Sidewalk to the south.
And y'all are good with sidewalks, obviously. Like to ask.
Perfect. PL 1815 Magnolia Sportsplex Final Plat. Request for a final plat approval for 1 lot on 3.3 acres. The subject property is located on the north side of Holly Springs Road, east of McInville Road, in Section 17, Township 3, Range 7. R&H Engineering. Mr. Cardoza, present the planning staff report and comments.
Yes, sir. This is PL 1815, another final plat request for Magnolia Sportsplex subdivision, 1 lot on 3.33 acres. This was recently subject to a PUD amendment to allow for a soccer facility, which was subsequently approved by the Board of Aldermen. There's direct access to Holly Springs Road, and water and sewers provided by City of Hernando. The improvements will be required to match the other side of the road. And as in the last application, the applicant's proposing to tie that in with the building permit to happen it all at the same time. It is zone PUD, and the setbacks are listed in your staff report. And as I mentioned, it is to provide for the new sportsplex proposed on that parcel. And this will also be heard at the May 21st meeting. And then the standard conditions are 1 through 9 are typical for our lane and a half and sidewalk to be associated with the subdivision. And Mr. Andy Richardson's representing this application as well. So I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Cardoza? Applicant, please come forward, state your name and address.
Andy Richardson, R&H Engineering, 231 West Center Street. And like Austin said, this is a part of that PUD that was amended here recently, and this is more or less just a procedural step, if y'all approve, for them to kind of continue their process.
Any question for the applicant?
I have a question. I thought when we did this this is the soccer complex, is that right?
No. Yeah, indoor soccer, yeah.
For some reason, I thought it was like 4-something acres. Was it not ever that? Okay.
No, this is the same exact drawing.
Okay.
I believe the remainder,
Was that Toyota property?
yeah, I think it's right at 5 acres, the remainder.
Okay. For some reason, I was just thinking it was 4.5 acres or something. Doesn't matter, so.
All right, thank you. Anyone support or against this item? Is there a motion to approve, deny, or table this item?
I'll make a motion to grant final plat approval to Magnolia Sportsplex, commercial subdivision, 1 lot, 3.33 total acres, subject property located on the north side of Holly Springs Road, east of Mackinville Road in Section 17, Township 3, Range 7, upon a finding that the submitted plat generally conforms to the requirements of the city's codes and ordinance, subject to the conditions set forth in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Second.
Second.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Safley?
Aye.
Commissioner Max?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
All right.
The motion to approve this item passes. And we have an ordinance
Yes, sir.
amendment.
The next is a request, in our property maintenance or our nuisance abatement code. I've included several pictures of dumpsters that are in the city that either have broken doors or the doors are just not being used. And so trash seems to be accumulating and we get lots of complaints. And so, we didn't have anything in the ordinance specifically addressing, like, if you have the doors, they've got to stay closed. It was just kind of assumed. And so, what we're proposing is to add the language in yellow to our nuisance abatement ordinance that says if you are commercially zoned and you've got one of these dumpsters, you've got to keep the doors closed other than times of service and delivery. So, of course, you can open it when you're putting trash in there, but when they stay open, they seem to get messy. And so, the proposal is to amend the ordinance to specifically add that language.
Can I add a sentence to that?
Sure.
Well, even if I shut the doors, that doesn't mean all that trash up behind the dumpster's cleaned up. 'Cause that still can collect varmints and snakes and mice and whatnot. So you own a dumpster, trash goes in the dumpster. I mean, that's what it's for.
Trash shouldn't accumulate outside the dumpster at
Right,
any time.
yeah, right, it shouldn't, I mean, these pictures, it's like you got a dumpster, but you're not using it. It's going in the back or on the side.
And I guarantee you what happened, somebody came up and it was full, so they just threw it right beside it, right there's what happened. That's exactly what happened.
And I mean, when we say commercially zoned dumpsters, I mean, this isn't zoning pursuant to our city zoning. You know, C1, C2, C3, like that.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of putting that in there was just to not confuse it with any sort of residential zonings. Like if somebody puts their trash can out by the street too long, because some cities do have those rules where you can only put your trash out like 24 hours before trash day. And it's tough to enforce, and so I wanted to specifically address the problem we were having without leaving the door open for something else.
My only concern with that is that if it's something that's grandfathered in, and I don't have anything that comes off the top of my head, but I know there's stuff like that in Hernando that may be in an area that's not zoned commercially, and being able to enforce that.
Yeah, if it doesn't have doors, is that what you mean? Or if
Well,
there's no
I mean, just,
enclosure?
maybe it's in an
Like an
agricultural
agricultural zone.
Oh, I
that just
see.
hasn't been changed.
So
I mean, I was gonna
commercial use,
Commercial
maybe?
business.
That's what I was gonna say, commercial
Or
business.
office use.
Or
because
you could
offices
say-
have them as well.
Absolutely, or you could
That's a good
say,
point.
if you utilize a commercial service, not city services, but that's used for commercial services, because all these are, I mean, Republic and Waste Pro or whoever it is are all contracted outside of the city.
So when a commercially serviced dumpster has a dumpster enclosure on the site, the doors must remain
I like
closed.
it.
Well, yes, and but then if this is my dumpster, I don't have doors, so there's nothing I can do about it.
They're gonna have to add them. I mean, I guess technically you're supposed to have, our current code says you have to have doors. That one is being pursued kind of something different, so that one's going to be fixed separately. But, and honestly, I think that's the only one I know of that doesn't have doors, but
There's a couple that have been broken off and the the actual dump trucks are, garbage trucks are not forgiving on those doors.
Yeah.
So some of them are broken off, but.
Or just simple language, if, I mean, trash goes in a dumpster, period. It doesn't go on the side and behind it and on the ground and.
So what I've got is, in addition, when a commercially serviced dumpster has a dumpster enclosure on a site, doors must remain closed other than times of service and delivery, and trash shall not accumulate outside of the dumpster at any time.
Yep.
That works. Just process question real quick, Austin. So something like this gets approved, and then does this, like a letter, go out to all commercial businesses in the city then to let them know the ordinance has been updated? How does that, how do we get the message out that the ordinance has changed?
So it takes a minute to get these things going, like 30 days, you know, the publish
I think you have
notice.
to run it 30 days in the newspaper.
Yeah, but I mean, to your point, we'll give a warning letter, of course. We're not gonna just show up to the door with a
No,
ticket. But, you know, I think everyone kind of assumed that like that wasn't okay, but we just didn't have that rule. And so by putting that rule in there, we'll give them warnings and say, please clean it up. You've got a certain number of time. If they don't apply, yeah. I mean, I don't know of a blanket letter. We can obviously publish if that's what y'all want, but
No, I just didn't know what the current, when we change an ordinance, how do we notify the businesses with?
yeah. I mean, we use common sense enforcement on the ones that are an issue, just to try to get them in, but,
Is there a standard, like, fine if you don't comply? Is different type of rule breaks?
it goes to the judge, so we go to municipal court. I think it's up to, not to exceed type of thing, so it's kind of a discretion.
I know,
A
it's in the,
misdemeanor.
it should be in the ordinance if it's not.
It's whatever's, if your property's vacant in a nuisance and abatement ordinance, there's this whole separate section of penalties. This is just adding to that section that specifically you can't do the dumpster thing.
And we recommend this to the board and then they have to approve it.
That's right. I guess we just need a motion with that language, if that's what you want to do.
Need a motion?
Put mine up. Motion to approve the addition to the dumpster guidelines. How do you want that worded?
Yeah, just amend to say commercially serviced dumpster, and then trash is not to accumulate outside the dumpster at any time.
All right, is that set? Matt.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan? Commissioner Safley?
Aye.
Commissioner Max?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
The motion to approve that item passed. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
All right. Adjourn.
Approved.